welcome everyone to the Tuesday, December 13th, 2022 Winchester Planning Board meeting. We have a quorum. You are all being recorded both by WinCam, thank you WinCam, as well as via Zoom. So if you do not wish to appear on the recording, please turn off your video and mute your audio. A roll call vote, please. Nick Rosettos.
Aye, here, present.
Sally Dale.
Present.
Kurt.
Present.
And Dia is present. Me, myself, and I, all three of us. There are three of Nick. So so let us dive right into, we also have with us, of course, we have our town planner, Brian Kelly. We have our recording secretary, Nancy Polcari. We've got our observer from, I don't want to call you an observer, Mr. Leaf, because
he's a liaison.
Our liaison, thank you, with the Chamber of Commerce. And we have Mr. Levitt, who will be joining us at 7:30. So onward to, do we have any updates?
Well, I would like an update on the status of the conversation between the town manager's office and the personnel committee board with regards to the job description for posting the town planner position.
Do you want me to relate what our discussion was with them last week? Okay, so those who...
Well, nothing happened since then?
Well, I don't think the rest of the board was not aware of that conversation. So,
oh, good. Okay, so that's a good update topic.
Okay, so everyone on the... So last Tuesday, the personnel board...
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, Dia, but that we do give about 30 minutes to this.
Oh, that's right. It's
yeah, I noticed.
Oh, at the very end, that's much more suitable.
30,
I'm sorry,
30,
Brian.
No, yeah,
sorry.
just
yeah.
That makes sense.
But okay, so we'll leave it until then. Any other requests for updates? Okay, Brian, you want to update us on, say, section 3A?
Yeah, a couple of, well, exactly a couple, meaning two very large updates related to section 3A. So Monday, I was able to submit our action plan to DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, which will give us interim compliance until, or I would imagine, I don't, meaning they haven't accepted the, I just submitted it. Hopefully, I don't know the timeline. We are one of 15 communities that has submitted an action plan out of the 175 that this law affects. So we're one of 15. I would imagine that, it's probably in a 4 to, because of the holidays, I'm going to go with 6 to 10 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, I don't know, something like that, but I really don't know. So maybe I shouldn't have even said that because I really don't know what the timeline is. But anyway, that was like a really big thing that needed to happen. I had a smile on my face like the whole rest of the day. It was a lot of that had to do with Brian Manter in engineering, who helped me with the GIS. This was not kind of beginner level GIS analysis that they're asking cities and towns to do. Many people, well, I shouldn't say many, some communities are hiring consultants just to submit the action plan, meaning to do the compliance model and submit the action plan. So we were lucky to be able to do that in-house. And we were able to, we applied to the Massachusetts Housing Partnership Technical Assistance Grant to help us make, it's about $20,000 worth of consulting that we actually, we just found out last night that the consultant that's going to be helping us get the 3A compliance over the goal line, meaning through the zoning, helping us through the zoning in conjunction with legal counsel, is actually Jennifer Goldson, who worked on our master plan. This is another really big piece of, that's the other kind of big piece of news, is that we got this grant. We were one of 51 communities, again, out of a total of 175. So right now we're one of 15 that have submitted our action plan, and we're one of 51 that applied for technical assistance to MHP. We received it as well as every other of the 50 other communities. Everyone got the grant. It turned out to not be a competitive grant. They were able to fund everybody. So we found that out last week. And then we found out, like I said last night, that our consultant that's going to be working with us is Jennifer Goldson, which I don't think it could not have been a better outcome, period. So this is a different kind of a grant. It's very quick. It's basically, like I said, about $20,000, and it is for like a 3 to 5 month kind of intense, you know, a lot of hours, but it's basically a 3 to 5 month project. So the timing of it couldn't have been better. Yeah.
Just refresh my memory as to what we get. What's the
in terms of, so
work?
No, that's a good question. So sometime over this week or next week, there's going to be a budget. Well, we know relatively the budget, but a scope and a timeline. So that's what I'm going to be developing, and what makes sense for her to mostly focus on. We have a form in place that's going to kind of be guiding the whole design guidelines, design standards, whatever we kind of want to call them, the look and feel. I think Jennifer Goldson could be most used in 2 ways. One is actually not necessarily talking about the design guidelines, but talking about the actual zoning, but also the public participation as it relates to that. So she, I believe she has designed several really kind of successful different events that we had through the master plan. So basically that's something I'm thinking: public participation and more towards focus on kind of knitting together the zoning and the design guidelines. I think that's kind of where we can get that help from her.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, that was the big 3A update. I don't think there. Oh yeah. This didn't. I don't think I announced this at the last one, but the Ken Pruitt in the sustainability department, along with Stoneham and their planner Aaron Wortman, and I want to. I think it actually is Arlington. They got this new AC Accelerating Climate Resilience grant, and they're going to be developing this kind of handbook that more is going to be coming out related to that. But they just announced that award. They got that grant, I believe, last week, or maybe it was right before our last meeting. So that was another piece of good news.
So let me. So we're using up lots of time, but that's okay because we have minutes. 15 minutes.
Minutes to approve. And...
Yeah, let me quickly jump into a couple of other updates. So, excuse me. So Sally, Brian, and I met with the Form in Place folks, John Rufo and Michael Wang, this morning to convey the board's decision of a couple of weeks ago that we wanted them to essentially to extend their contract by another year to do a good test fits up on the northern part of North Main Street, and to work on helping us winnow everything down to a solid set of proposals for the zoning and for the design. They were happy with that. I think as we know, they did a great amazing work on the southern part of North Main Street, so we've laid that out, and we're going to be having a meeting with them early next year to discuss how this all meshes with the 3A stuff coming in. So that's been set up, and hopefully we'll have Jennifer Golson on, but under contract by then, but that's up to, we'll see what happens.
Who's giving the money for Jennifer?
The money from Jennifer comes from the Mass Housing Partnership.
Wow, that's great.
Correct.
That's fantastic.
It's grant
Yeah.
money. Yeah, grant money from
Um,
MHP. Yeah.
So the other thing is that Sally, Brian, and I met with the town manager's office was it Friday? Something like that, to discuss our budget, and they were very polite, and they didn't laugh in our face. But it is it's a challenging year, and so we shall see what happens. We outlined why we needed the town planner. I think everyone, as we'll go into when we get to our discussion at 9, we can go into more detail about that process. So that was something which happened, and I think I'm trying to think of anything else that cropped up. I don't have anything. So why don't-
The town manager search.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say that. So last night, the select board voted unanimously to continue with, to hire Beth Rudolph as our permanent town manager. So I think that's excellent news for the town. I think that from a planning board perspective, it's excellent news, but then we won't see her anymore. But we'll not as the town engineer. So there will be a new town engineer coming on board. But I assume that we will get an excellent town engineer. So,
And like the planning, the town planner interview process involving related boards and committees and departments, I would hope that the planning board would have a chance to participate in the interviews for the town engineer.
I will certainly make that desire known to Beth and to her team.
Okay,
So,
we have a lot of engineering work that comes across our
oh yeah,
meeting
but-
table.
Yeah, so I would hope so, but I will let them know
Thank
when
you.
that process starts. So why don't we dive into our planning board minutes?
Oh, good idea. Sorry.
And Nancy, you're going to hate me because I found an edit to make on the one that we'd already said was almost done except for one edit. So I apologize in advance. So Brian, if you want to.
Nancy, I don't think you have a hateful bone in your body.
Well, you may be displeased
Wait,
with me. How's that?
you're not seeing the planning board Tuesday, September 20th minutes now?
I certainly am. I just
Oh.
have to move everything out of the way on my own
Sure.
my own TV, my own screen. Okay, so wait a second. September 6th. I see a September 6th.
No, I see September 20th on our screens. Who's
Yes,
putting
I
it
know. I have to get to, they're in a different order, so sorry.
Brian, do you have the September
Yes.
20th one up?
September 20th is right up there. So
yes.
So this is the one where I believe Mr. Murray made a comment, a clarification on something, but then when I started reading it again, I noticed that right at the top of the page, where on B, where it says the Master Plan Implementation Committee has yet to vote, that's actually the Master Plan Youth Representative Selection Committee.
Where?
Under updates, B.
Oh,
Yeah, the Master Plan Implementation Committee had not formed. This is the, what did I just call it? I will send you.
youth member selection committee.
Yes, the Youth Representative Selection Committee, and I wish something just happened to my note. So that I will send to you, Nancy. And then Nancy, on page 2 and page 3 are the corrections that were requested. And other than that, in my new amendment, I think we're ready to go. So if there is a,
Ian?
yes,
I have my hand up. I don't know if you can see it physically.
no, I can't, I'm sorry, because
No, that's
there you
okay.
are. Okay, go ahead.
I'm really amazed that the machine put my yellow hand up on the screen when I did this. It's like amazing.
It's scary.
So on the bottom of page 2, and I know we're going to be talking about 3.5.5 later in this meeting, but I am so confused about the correction. So in the gray highlights of bottom of page 2, ZBA, topic 1, special permit versus variance, Mr. Tallerman speaks. He noted, and this is Nancy did her research and put in this correction, that Tallerman noted that adding a new nonconformity on a conforming property requires a variance, where adding a new nonconformity on a non-conforming property requires a special permit. And that, I just put a great big O
So
in my margin notes.
So is that a question for
Well, I
the
just,
minutes?
is that the corrected clarification right there?
If that's what was said, then
Generally, yes. This is
Yes.
generally, this is correct, is that if you're adding a new nonconformity on a conforming property, that is generally, that requires a variance, yes.
Okay, that's super helpful. To put it in the context of the second statement, we're adding a new nonconformity to a new nonconforming property requires a special permit. I mean, put in layman's language, it says if your property is completely within the rules, well, we'll talk about it later, but I
Yes,
just want to
yes,
say I was very
let's just-
pleased with that
why
clarification.
why don't you hold on to that?
Yes,
thought
I will,
until
and I
our-
have no other edits.
Okay, so could I please get a motion approving the minutes of September 20th, 2022 as amended?
So moved.
And is there a second, please?
Seconded.
Thank you. And let's do a quick roll call vote. Kurt,
Aye.
Sally,
I,
Nick,
Aye.
and Dieb says aye as well. Thank you much. Let's move on to the next. So so we're on November 29th, 2022. Are there any edits on this one?
I have an edit on page 2.
Okay.
So under section 3, fiscal 24 budget discussion, Chair Jarius.
Mhm.
There's this sentence, it's the second to last sentence. It says, this position has been on the planning board agenda for years. I think what you might have said or meant is this position has been part of the planning board budget request for several years.
I think that's true. I think that's what I hope to say.
Okay, so do you accept that edit?
I would accept that as edit.
It is true, whether he said it or not, I couldn't tell you, but it's definite, it's true.
Okay,
Okay.
so let's just
That
change
it's
the word
been
agenda to
in the budget, yeah.
Yep. And if you could pass that on to
I
Nancy,
will.
and then any other further edits? I have one at the bottom of page 2, where it says lot aggregation is the basis for the PUD. The only current PUD is at 10 Converse Place. I believe that's better phrased, the only PUD under current development. Because we have.
No, because Fell's Hardware was a PUD look. Oh, no, it wasn't either.
No, it
I'm sorry.
wasn't.
Right.
So I think that we have multiple PUDs, but this is the only one that's under development.
Yeah,
But
PUD
I-
is a zoning district, meaning I think that's what it means, is that 10 Converse Place is not a PUD, it's in a PUD. Does that make?
So how do we rephrase this?
I remember that we said that the only PUD that is currently not the target of any proposals is the PUD on the east side of Main Street between the Rotary and the Stop and Shop.
We have 3 PUDs.
Right, and that's the one that has no current activity.
Which is the other PUD that has activity other than 10 Converse?
Waterfield,
Waterfield.
Waterfield, PUD?
yes.
Huh,
They will most likely come, well, I don't know. They're either gonna come in with a PUD special permit, but they might not need to. They might be able to just come in at a regular special permit because they're so low. Meaning, the height
Yeah,
is so low,
okay.
so.
I thank you for reminding me of that. That was obviously my brain, my memory.
Am
is
I
bad
the
there.
only person who remembers that it was noted in our meeting that the only current PUD that doesn't have any inquiries with regards to it is the one I just described?
To be honest, my recollection of that conversation is jumbled, so.
That's generally consistent with my recollection too, Sally.
Thank you. I'm not going
Okay.
senile yet.
So why don't we just go with Sally, you wanna repeat your
Yes,
your
lot
correction?
aggregation is the basis for the PUD, semicolon. The one PUD remaining in the CBD that has not been a recipient of a development proposal or been the subject of a development proposal is the PUD on the east side of Main Street, north of the Rotary, up to the Stop and Shop.
Okay, so we're gonna delete 10 Converse completely from that statement.
Yeah, there is a development proposal for
Right.
that site and we're
Okay, I'm
waiting
just
for the
wondering,
news.
my only concern is somehow 10 Converse was mentioned in the notes, which would imply that it was mentioned in our discussion.
It would
So-
indeed, it would indeed.
So maybe we just ask Nancy to go back and try to
Re-
verify the context.
I think you can easily, well, yes, but I think really what happened is that 10 Converse Place was the only PUD special permit that went through the process. There's been no other PUD special permit. It's either been by right or just a regular special permit. So 10
Because like
Converse Place was the only application for a PUD special permit. I believe that's what was said. So-
Okay, the only current PUD special permit application is
Correct.
what you're saying, right?
Yep, and it probably will be the first of two, meaning that the Waterfield may come in, Civico
Sure.
may come in as that as well.
Okay.
So we'll keep moving here.
Okay,
So
Roger, Roger.
if
That's it.
any other amendments? If not, I would welcome, Sally, if you could please pass that language on.
I
to
will.
Nancy. Yeah, I would welcome a motion to approve the minutes of November 29th, 2022.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
thank you. Roll call vote, please. Nick,
Aye.
Sally,
I,
Kurt,
Aye.
and Deeb says aye as well. Thank you much. And then we have one further, I believe. We can get through this one very quickly, I hope. So this is,
No, I just only had two in the one that Suzanne just recently sent out.
well, there's a September 6th one right below this one, isn't that it? Or am I-
No, it goes right into the
Oh, shoot. So we only,
and we're not even doing that. So
Yeah, okay.
meaning the Board of Appeals. So
yeah, why did I think there were three? Because I can't count.
I-
September 20th and November 20th. That's what's on the agenda. Okay, this
That's
is
it, yeah.
excellent. So we
Yeah.
are right on time. We are 2 minutes shy actually of our hearing or our pre-application meeting essentially with Mr. Levitt,
and Mr. McConnell.
Mr. McConnell. Both of them are here with us. So do you folks need control? You guys have something you want to show, or do you want us to?
Hi. How you doing this evening?
Hi, it's pretty good. Do you guys need, do you need,
Jack Levitt. I got my technical director with me, my son-in-law. I didn't know whether you were gonna be here tonight or not, Brian, so.
I'm
I
happy.
believe-
I can go. Oh, here comes teaching. I can certainly drive, and you can let me know when to go. If you give me maybe 30 to 40 seconds, I'll go get that.
and while we're
Well,
here.
Can you do it,
Chief
Joe? No
Scott,
problem.
our,
My son-in-law can do it, Brian. Thank you. That's cool.
Okay.
Okay.
Ching,
Yeah. Then we'll give you permission. All right.
Okay. One sec, everyone. I Ching, could you just say that you're present, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Did it start at 7?
Yes,
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
present.
you are definitely present. Okay, thank you, I Ching. Um,
So, Deanne, I'm unable to give Jack Levitt a co-host privileges. Could you please do that? It's
yes, I can certainly do that.
because I am
Oh,
no
'cause
longer the host of this Zoom.
it claims you are the co-host.
It says I'm a co-host, but unfortunately, I guess co-hosts can't make other people co-hosts. It's a new thing that I did not know.
Okay.
Kind of like inviting the person to the party, like you can only go one.
So,
That's not fair.
You can just
Jack,
bring
you are
one. You
now
get the person.
co-host.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. It's all yours. We've got about half an hour. How long do you think your presentation is?
Probably about 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, if we can keep it to 15, that'll give us 15 minutes to discuss it. I think a lot of
Yes.
people on this board have not seen this presentation before, so they might have lots of questions.
Okay. So anyway, I guess what I want to start out with, 2.5 years ago, I came before the board. And what took place is that I withdrew. I withdrew for several reasons. Number one, COVID. Number two, I had to deal with my abutters to understand what they were looking for. And I worked out with my abutters to basically satisfy their needs. So what I'd like to start off with is the building as it was back in 1940, late 40s, 1950. If you could, this is what the building looked like in late 40s, early 50s. As you can see, it's really not, I don't want to be nasty about it. It's not a nice look at downtown Winchester. If you look at what is going on if you're looking downtown, and there's been discussion in reference to, I'm going to change the whole look of downtown. Well, if I look at this look, please, if they ever duplicate the Lyceum building, the historical fact, this is what it looked like in the 1940s, early 50s. If I move forward and I go to what I'm looking to put up this is what I am looking to put up. I am looking to put up a third floor on top of a 2-story building and add 4 apartments to existing 5 apartments that exist today. It has been for 120 years, this building has existed. Now, when I was before the design review board, there was discussion in reference, they did not like the design of the interior of the apartments. These apartments have been rented successfully for 120 years. So, I mean, that's a fact. It's nothing going forward. It's a fact that they've been rented for 120 years. More importantly, the median price income for the Middlesex County is about $1,850 a month for a 1-bedroom. I think I'm only getting $1,650. I'm not trying to be a hustler as far as getting a lot of money for my units. That's existing today. If you would like to discuss anything of what I'm showing now, maybe Joe, you can bring up the apartments on the first floor. No, on the second floor, I'm sorry. These are the existing apartments right now, as you can look at them. The existing apartments are really a duplicate of what we have for the third floor addition. They're one bedroom apartments. All the bedrooms are in the front. again, I have to reiterate, 120 years of rental success. I mean, this is not something new in this town. This has been going on for 120 years. So if I go to the third floor, this is where we're going to be with the third floor. Again, 4 apartments. Apartments are in the front, no issues. I mean, it's a win-win for the town. This is the reason why this CBD district was developed. So that's where I am at. Now, as far as technically, as far as my architect, John McConnell, I mean, he can weigh in reference to how the construction is and where it's at. And by the way, John is a consultant for historical architecture. I brought him in because my architect that designed the plan is not historical. So we redesigned it to satisfy my abutters. And if you want to take over from this point, Sean, please do.
Okay, let's go back to the rendering.
Okay,
While we're doing that, I want to make sure that I clarify that I am not the architect of record of this project. Mr. Levitt has another architect who is doing all the significant drawings. He involved me in this through my experience being both a historically sympathetic practicing architect and as for 43 plus years a professor of architectural history at Boston College. So I've had a lot of experience with architectural history. The point here was how to put another story on this building and have the net result be sympathetic to the existing building, but also to stand on its own as a unified piece of architecture in the center of town. And of course, the point here was to provide housing in the CBD in the process of doing that. And my ultimate decision here was that the appropriate way to add a third story would be to treat it as what is known in architectural history as an attic story. That the name comes from Attica in Greece, in which there is a story, and this is, you know, hundreds of thousands of examples of this, a story above the principal cornice of the building. Our current building has a very profound and very wonderful cornice on it, and the point would be to keep that and to add a shortened story with minimized detail above that, with the fenestration being a repeat of the patterns that are occurring on the second floor here above that. And so that's essentially the explanation of all of this. The walls of the third floor would stand directly above the bearing walls of the exterior of this building. That's the only way it makes structural sense.
Right.
If the upper floor were to be set back in any way, it would not only be structurally very difficult, but I would certainly judge it as being aesthetically difficult as well. So that the appropriate way to do this is to treat it as a complete, simple block of a building that could stand on its own, looking like it had always been that way. So that's my explanation for where this comes from.
Okay, thank you. Is that the total of your presentation this evening?
yes,
I believe it is.
Okay, well then let us dive into some questions. And so let me dive in quickly because I have a couple that are kind of leftover from your presentation a couple of years back. So one is that I believe you have a section 8 permit. A floating permit, I believe, or something like that. Is that true for your existing?
One of the existing units back then, yes, we did. Unfortunately, that woman is no longer with us.
Okay, so you no longer have a section 8. Are you interested in pursuing another section 8 voucher for the property?
We would. That's
Okay.
all.
And then I think I don't have, this is something that Brian, perhaps you know more, and certainly John Serbier would know more. There are section 8s which go with properties and section 8s which go with individuals. So I take it this came with the individual.
Yes.
Okay. And are you interested in getting a section 8 that would go with the property?
No, well, I would do one with the individual.
Okay.
I would do several with the individual. I'm not objection. There's no objection to that.
No, I just my checklist.
No, I understand.
Diab,
And
do you know whether or not that's even possible? Like, you mean like a sticky voucher that's attached to the property as
there
opposed to the
is, I
tenant?
believe there is such a thing. And
I just wasn't sure if the state were issuing any more of them. That's, I guess,
I
what was
don't know,
curious
and
about.
that's why I defer to John Serbier. Brian is shaking his head vigorously. So I must have
I
said
also
something
want to
wrong.
intervene and say, I think it's illegal for any landlord to refuse Section 8.
Oh, yeah, the only difference would be whether it sticks with the property or goes with the individual. Yeah, so I will reach out to John Serbier and clarify that. I probably have that wrong. The other thing that I have written down is, or one of the others, is that previously, the owners of the Lyceum had some objections to your property, and you say you've worked with the abutters. Could you?
That's been resolved in reference to the windows that we're gonna put up against the petition wall in the Lyceum to my existing building as it stands now.
Mhm.
And we would not put windows to the left-hand side of the third floor unit.
Okay,
If we could bring up, I'll show you on the third floor. So you can see. 1 second, please.
Oh, I
Okay.
see. Yes.
On the third floor, originally there was windows up and down that apartment. That's the abutting wall.
Right.
Mhm.
They have been eliminated. That has been, and also what we did was the setback originally was, I believe, 3 feet. We brought it back to 7 feet on the left-hand side where the windows were gonna be. And on the right-hand side of the building, that's the existing footprint of the building.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay, so there's a very large corridor, as it were, between
correct,
your
correct,
third floor and the Lyceum building.
correct. Well, apparently that's where horse and buggies used to come in. And this was originally built for a grocery store going back in 1895.
Hmm.
And they used to come into that 7.9 feet corridor. I mean, I guess a horse and buggy was very narrow back then.
So Jack, I hate to point this out, but so then zero amount of the actual other than the bedroom, so then zero amount of the living space has a window.
No. In the front,
So the bedroom, right? The bedroom has it,
Bedroom,
but
correct.
that outside of the bedroom, there are no other windows,
Skylights.
skylights.
There's
Okay.
going to be skylights in them.
Because I think you can look at the other two interior units also would also only have, other than skylights, would only have windows on the front. So Yeah,
correct.
Right. So, John, I have a question about what you were saying about the step back from the adjacent building. Because I see the big area on the left that says 55 feet, 7 5/8 inches, which is the dimension of the abutting building. You were saying you were setting back your building by 7 feet. Does that work with the structural integrity?
No, that's the footprint of the building. In other words, the 51.9, or I don't have my glasses with me. right
No,
now.
I see it on the right side. It says 51.8 or 51
Right.
feet 8 inches.
Correct.
It says 55 7 5/8. Or maybe it says 53 7 5/8. I think it's a 5. But so I remember from 2 years ago that when you had wanted to do a setback, a stepped back third floor, the discussion was that the building could not structurally accommodate a third floor that was not resting on the existing structure. And so when you said you were going to step back the left side of the third floor, is that not resting on the existing walls of the existing structure?
There's beams underneath that, which apparently, from an engineering standpoint of view, support that small span. The only span that was set back 3 feet was, I believe, it's not up there, but I believe it's like a total of 12 feet on the left-hand side, where the stairs are going down the second egress.
Yeah.
That's the only, and the rest of everything else is on the existing structure.
But so it says roof, roof, roof across the top of the building. Is that
Yes,
the roof of
correct.
the second floor of the
It's
current
a roof
building?
of the second floor, correct.
So that is also not being built on the existing exterior walls.
No, that's all of that from the right-hand side to the left-hand side until you get to the second egress to the left-hand side is existing footprint.
Right.
The only thing that is support beams in the back of the building that are they're like I don't know the technical aspect of it, but from an engineering standpoint of view, they support what we're looking to do. In the front, they would never support, there's no beams.
Are you saying that there are beams in the top of this drawing on the second floor roof?
Yes.
Oh, and are you saying that there's
they
beams?
They run from the back to the front.
No.
well, I think
that belies then the concern from 2.5 years ago that you couldn't do a stepped back third story because it wasn't supported. You're saying that you can step it back on two sides,
only in the
Can't do it
back.
in the front.
or you can't do it in the
front.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is no beams. In
Yeah,
the
so
front,
this-
there's no beams.
The only difference I think between this plan and what we saw a couple of years back is the location of the back wall.
Correct.
The front wall is the same. So we have about 13 minutes left.
I have
And-
comments about the outside too, but I can wait for other members to weigh in.
Well, I think I know the Historical Commission and the Design Review Commission have come in and said things about this. So can you tell us? I don't have the Historical Review
The
Commission.
historical commission basically voted 4-1 to go forward.
Okay,
The design review commission, they were all against it. They were telling me that basically that They were telling me they didn't like the layout of the apartments. They were telling me that if you look at the view from Mount Vernon Street, that it was terrible. But if I look at and I show you what the Lyceum building, if by right was to be reconstructed, I think that anyone with common sense could look and see that you have a building that is really not in a very nice, it's really ugly in my eye. In other words, the abutting wall from me to the Lyceum building is something, it's ugly for downtown Winchester.
So it's the wall that's exposed if you were standing up, say, in the steeple of the Congregational Church there, you would see this abutting
Well,
wall.
Well,
Exactly.
Jack, go back to the original,
Yeah.
the 40
Th- th-
photo from
th-
the 40s. Yeah.
This would be the wall.
So they can build this by right. The Lyceum
right,
building
correct.
could reconstruct this
I see.
upper story and a half by right because they're a historical building or something of that ilk.
So I
So
live in town for 40 years, and I gotta tell you something. I wouldn't want to look at this building in my worst day. I mean, anyone with any common sense would look at this and say, this is crazy. I'm not talking about the Lyceum building. I'm talking about the abutting wall.
The blank wall that's facing the camera right now.
Exactly.
Interesting.
any
But that
any-
wall isn't there currently, but there can.
No, but they got by
Reconstruct it.
right to build it. Someone eventually is going to build that wall. Historical, they have to do it by historical, exact as it was.
They wouldn't, well, no, they basically would be able to recreate the pitch essentially of that, of that roof to that height without asking for permission, even if it was out, even if it required a special permit otherwise. But if they basically recreate the height and shape, they can do that, just that height portion. They can do that without asking for a special permit.
And they could add windows to that exterior.
There's
face.
nothing stopping them, and I think that was what the whole thing that Jack and the butter had to figure out on their own terms, which is why he's back in front of the boards and committees now.
Mhm.
So Jack, your resolution with the abutter was that you wouldn't put any windows on your side of the third floor of their side of your
Correct,
third floor. You would keep it blank
correct.
with the understanding that they could rebuild that wall with windows?
No, they can't.
They could possibly put it in the very top of that if they
Yes,
wanted
that's
to.
true. Excuse me. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
it would, but
Yes.
yeah, if they
Okay,
put
so
it,
there would be no windows between, like, looking into each other's kitchens or bathrooms or whatever.
Well, I think
Correct.
the walls are abutting. I mean,
They're
there's-
abutting. It's.
Oh, they're
it's a-
right up.
It's a petition wall that we both share.
See, that's why I got confused from the previous plan. I couldn't see that it was an abutting wall. I'm sorry for
Correct.
not reading your plans articulately.
so
Anyway.
we have about 8 minutes left and and I think I've gotten through all of the questions that I had left over, official ones. So Kurt and I Ching, do you want to have any other concerns about this?
I just
think-
had two quick clarifying questions
Yeah.
for the petitioner, which is I think when I looked at the aerial view, it looks like there may be some existing skylights that go into the second floor unit. Are there any?
There are.
There are. So those will go away. Is that going to turn living space in the second floor that has no windows and currently a skylight into living space with no natural light?
No, the only one that really would be the one to the far left. The rest of the windows have plenty of ample. They have two windows per unit.
Got it. And then thank you. My other question was on the facade. I was having trouble discerning, I guess, what the exterior material is going to be? Is it proposed to be like brick or like a mansard roof type material? I'm trying to figure out what the aesthetic you're looking for. If it's like a continuation of the brick facade, or if it's meant to look more like a mansard.
I don't want to lie to you. We haven't gotten, John, I think that, John McConnell, I got to refer to you on this, and I think we were going to go with stucco. Is that correct?
That's a possibility. It would be stucco that would be colored to match the brick below it. It would certainly, the walls would be straight 90-degree up walls. It wouldn't be a mansard, which
Okay.
of course would be a completely alien style on top of what is basically a late Queen Anne style building.
Got it. Because John, I thought when you were referencing it, you were talking about trying to create like a, you know, almost like an attic or like I thought you were describing it as more an attic-y type space, as opposed to now you're saying like you think that's aesthetically inaccurate. It would have to be,
No,
because you have this like heavy cornice there, and you're just layering like another tier on top of that heavy sort of cornice, which is usually the top of the building, like the parapet wall.
yeah. When I use the word attic, it's a capital A. It doesn't mean like the attic in your house. It's an architectural historical term referring to a full story above the principal cornice of a
Got it.
building. And that's what this would be.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you guys are trying to do more like what I don't know the proper name for it, but the bookends building obviously has like a beautiful 2 levels of like slate roofing and. I
Oh,
didn't know if
sure,
that
but
was the
that's,
aesthetic you were
that's,
looking for.
yep, that's an entirely different style and all of that. So yeah, it has a beautiful pitched roof with patterned slate and all of that.
Got it. Okay, I'm good. I Ching, you should ask your.
So, yeah, Kurt, I read that too as somewhere in between a mansard roof and maybe just an extrusion. And it seems to me a little bit, I mean, it's not particularly offensive or whatever, but it just, I can't, it seems like it's not going one way or the other. Like this like straight flat roof reminds me of the pink building right by the fire station, but with this extra little, tutu cornice. So, I wonder, because reading this rendering, I thought it was a setback of the 3rd floor had setback. But I see that the cornice really reads, it makes it look a little bit set back, but it isn't. So I'm fine with it, but I just wonder if it could lean one way or the other a little bit more, but it doesn't strike me as anything to really place my arguments on. But go ahead.
The Historical Commission really does not want to adjust that original cornice.
Right. I mean, I think it's lovely, but the extrusion of the thing above it, it looks contemporary.
Well,
but-
they wanted
but
to
not-
reduce that. They wanted to reduce. That was much more pronounced.
Yeah. No,
They-
I think it's fine. It's not any sort of, I don't think it's offensive looking at all. I think it's just, what it is. But I do agree in the plans that they could be a little bit better in providing some living spaces with natural light. I the corner apartments are lovely, but the bedrooms do take up the periphery spaces, in which they have to because they're bedrooms. But I wonder if they could be more loft-like or something to allow for more living natural light into living spaces. But again, it is using the 3rd floor skylights as natural light, which is nice. But it, like Kurt said, it reduces the natural lighting for the 2nd. But overall, one zoning question I had too for Brian too was the inclusionary housing. So for an 8 unit, so this would be 4 + 4. Is there a CBD requirement for it? Some things to be affordable?
Sure, this was a good question. It really has to do with whether or not he's kind of expanding or upgrading the existing units there. If it ends up kind of all being part of the same project and it's 6 or more, then the inclusionary housing kicks in. I don't believe that's happening here, but we'll
Only
know that
4
more.
units.
yeah, it's just the 4 that's above. It doesn't look like there's any reconfiguration, or if it is, and it's something minor. I think like there's this trigger essentially that if you start touching those existing units a little bit more, you start upgrading like everything, and you start like reconfiguring all these things, then it's possible, then yeah, this really is, you could be considered. So you really have to, you'll know at the time of application in terms of what's happening with those existing units.
Right.
And for the applicant too, is this the max that one can build here? Is this the max
I
height?
don't know. There's a new law that came into effect and it's
Right.
coming into effect.
Well, this is an unusual building in that it has an FAR of
1.75.
yeah, and so there
That's where
are-
I'm looking for relief to 2.4.
Yeah, so that is, there is a limit on the FAR that's allowed on this lot. And one of the ways they're making sure they don't get to that limit is because this additional story is less than a full story. It comes in underneath the maximum FAR. At least that's my recollection of what was the last time around.
Well, it technically probably could, they could ask for something like a little bit higher height, but that doesn't change the FAR. You know,
Right.
meaning it could make that more of a loft, but I think the proportions here, I don't know if, yeah, I don't think that would work maybe for most or some, or I don't know.
So this is at 2.4, so you're asking for relief here? Is that
Yes.
right?
They're asking, yeah, they would be asking for relief here because we have never seen a 3rd floor on this building. There might be some remnants, but there's no proof, like it's just not there. So this is not like a recreation of anything.
So
Brian,
for
what
the
about-
inclusionary housing, what you're saying is because they're not touching the 4 units, then it doesn't come into the play for the 6 or more.
If that's the
include-
case, we'll see. I don't, again, Jack, we haven't,
I've
haven't,
spoken to
yeah.
John,
Sir Beer, yeah.
right. And John he doesn't have no issues with the 4 units. And I explained to you earlier that basically, I believe we're at 1875 for the units. It's below the Middlesex.
Right.
If I don't know I'm forgetting the exact, it's below the housing rate for a one bedroom apartment. We're far within compliance and without being regulated. I'm far in compliance.
Yeah, Jack, actually, that was my question. So are you open or willing to put like an actual restriction on the rents that can be charged to the property, like a percentage of AMI? Or are you just saying you're willing to do it during, at least at the present time? But I mean, at any time.
I'm willing to have, I don't have a problem. I've had Section 8 vouchers in the building for many years. 2 at a time. That's not an issue. I think it would be with an elevator in there for senior people, it would be perfect for vouchers. I don't have a problem with that at all. Attached to the individual, not to the building.
Right, and there is an elevator proposed in your plans, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
What's the reason that you would not have one of the rental units be deed restricted affordable?
I have enough issues in my life other than dealing with another issue that the government's controlling me. I pay taxes when I go to the store. I pay taxes daily. I don't need another restriction if I can help it.
Okay,
Speaking
you're
honestly
willing-
with you.
if a tenant applicant comes to you with payment terms of Section 8, you're willing to accommodate
Oh,
them?
yeah, that's
You
not. a
have to,
problem.
Sally.
What?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
You
Yeah,
have to
that-
by law.
Yeah, that's not a choice.
yeah.
So I Ching, do you have other comments before I proceed to my comments about the 3rd floor? I didn't want to cut you off. So
Sorry, Sally, real quick though, before we jump to that, I was just really quick, wanted to ask Brian, like because since we're talking about the relief question that the applicant's seeking, Brian, can you just remind us like what the planning board's criteria are for evaluating relief in an instance like this?
Sure. So first of all, that's a good quick reminder here. I know Diab's trying to move this along here, but so this is still strangely enough, even though we've seen this several times, this is still a pre-application meeting. So
Sure.
the applicant's here to kind of try to determine what are the major issues, minor issues, all of the issues that they could potentially come to an application with.
Right.
How special permits are given, there's obviously the criteria of kind of maximizing a whole bunch of things that we want, like smaller units in the downtown near transit, like that's a positive. Then
Yep.
there's a whole bunch of negatives in terms of depending upon the density of how that affects parking and a whole bunch of other things, or bike store, or what there's a whole the normal evaluations. But really, when it comes down to it, what you're evaluating is, do the positive attributes of this proposal outweigh any negative aspects where it doesn't meet the guidelines or doesn't meet the zoning? That's what a special permit is. That's the whole point of a special permit, is to say, do the positives outweigh the negatives? If they do, then a special permit may be granted. Doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be.
Is there the ability to put in, I don't want to call it this, but I will anyway, some horse trading on things that the board might want to get the special permit? So for instance,
I come from the Schmate business, so I've horse traded most of my life.
well, the question I have is this allowed?
I
under-
think
so for
Brian
instance-
understands what the Schmate business.
Yeah, of course. So what this really has to do with is anything that the board may ask for has to be related to any negative aspect of of what they're causing. This is not the case here because this is only adding 4 units. But for example, if there was going to be a lot of units, they would have to get creative with parking, for example, or give a whole bunch of money to a parking fund, essentially, right? 10 Commerce across the street, they decided to do automatic parking. So that yes, there's a version of a concession in terms of, but what are you kind of talking about, I guess?
I'm not talking about anything. I'm just trying to lay out what the framework for a special permit is in
Sure,
terms of what sort of negotiations could go on in the future when you're not here to guide us.
I think the questions are one. So this just as Jack explained, this is pretty much maxing out the possibility that this building could ever essentially go in, period, which is not very big, right? This is not a huge, unbelievably crazy huge ask. So I guess that's number one, is that no matter what you see, if you don't like what you're looking at for the moment, this is as big as it could ever come in, and it is not this huge crazy thing that they're asking for. That's number one. In terms of how you would evaluate this, I can certainly go. I don't think it makes sense, Kurt, but I mean, we could go through the special permit criteria, but it is the same criteria that we go through, for any ZBA petition for the most part. It's slightly different, but it's pretty much the same. But in the end of the day, it's that balancing of scales of positive and negative.
So yeah.
So is it okay if I just make my comment about the 3rd floor right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please do.
So I think, now that I understand that what I'm looking at is a stucco finish, a brick toned stucco finish between the, I guess it would be cement to look like limestone, window enclosures or frames. I would prefer that if you're going to put a 3rd story on this building, that you replicate the brick between the windows. And the fact that the white window frames are floating in this, cement colored.
Oh, no. The surrounding windows would not be, that would be AZAC.
No, but the cream around the windows looks like it would be cement
AZAC.
or stucco, AZAC. So
AZAC.
why would you not, like in the second floor, the windows have brick above them before the cornice, and you even have that condition on the south side where the bay windows allow 1.5, 2 courses of brick between their roofs and the
Well, I
cornice.
guess, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, I just would like to see brick, not stucco, abutting the windows. And I'd like to see, perhaps with the approval of the design review committee, a little bit more articulation or depth on the third floor cornice. It just, one thing I see all the time driving around Boston is, oh, look, they stuck a third story on. And I think that to respect this building, it would be better if it looked like it had always been that way. That's one of my personal standards of design excellence is, oh, it looks like it's always been that way. It's just right. And this doesn't look right to me. Now, I don't know what the design review committee said about the siding or the cornice. And I'm hearing what you said about keeping the roof heights on the third floor lower, more in an attic, type of a vocabulary. But I really don't like the exterior siding of this. That said, I want to say that I understand that Winchester has a need for center business district additional housing. And Winchester as a community has a need for 1-bedroom apartments that are lowercase affordable, not uppercase affordable, if you understand the difference. So I'm not completely opposed to adding apartments to this building, but I want it to look, as I said, like it always looked that way. And I'm not an architectural preservationist, so I don't know if it can ever achieve that standard, but just having it be brick, not stucco would be a really big start, and not having those cream stucco frames around the AZAC window frames would be helpful. That's my point.
Okay, thank you. Maybe if
I just want to say, we've spent 2.5 years tinkering with details there, and there's no reason why we can't do some more of that. It started out a little more elaborate than this, and various committees, like Solomon dividing the baby in half, have sort of chipped away at it, and we've responded at every point to all of that. So this is where it's at the moment.
I hate to come into the design review process, chiming in late with yet another view. So in many ways, I would like to know what the design review committee would think about the exterior surface treatments of this proposed third story. To my less trained eye, it looks like it was stuck on there, not indigenous to the building.
may I ask you a question in reference to the design review? Are they a voting body to whether or not this building?
They are advisory to this board.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
So unfortunately, we do have to move on.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, so I think that the consensus of this board is that the presence of a third story I haven't heard any strong opinions that a third story is unwanted. I think that there has been discussion as to what the details are of the design. I would say the primary thing about the height of it seems good. No one's said anything against that. The location relative to the existing facade, I don't think I've heard anyone say that that's an issue. I think mostly what we've heard is just surface features in terms of going forward, in terms of design. So that is something that if this does come as a submission to this board, we can work out in great detail. But I haven't heard anything which would indicate that there is.
I'd just like to say
Yeah.
that I am trying to get my arms around the historical arguments for and against the third story. So I think it's premature to speak for the entire board, but I'm working very hard to
Then I will.
listen to not only John McConnell, who's a historic preservation expert. I want to hear what the Design Review Committee had to say, and I'm weighing it very carefully at this point.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for pointing that out. I was merely trying to summarize what had been said. So there you go. You have a late comment on Holger, that there's still an outstanding opinion. As in, the opinion is not yet here, so it's outstanding.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your conversation. And Brian, I just want to tell you, thank you for all your help. And I hope wherever you go, you have all the success in the world.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Ciao.
See you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you stopping by, and I'm sure we'll hear from you in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye
you.
now.
So let's turn now, and I apologize to our next guests. Where are they on my screen?
Here they are.
Oh, there you are. All of a sudden your camera turned on. It made everything go away. So we have Hilda Wongdu and we
Hi,
have Peter
Hi,
Pulsifer.
Hilda.
And Hilda, you are from the Cultural District, and Peter,
Yes.
you are from the Cultural Council.
Beautiful. You got it.
Oh, I was going to call you Commission, so I was
Oh,
close.
no.
Um,
Can I add to that confusion? He's also on the Cultural District Board.
No, we don't want to hear that. Sorry, that's too confusing.
Oh.
But you can
and-
clarify the distinction in terms of the authority of the two bodies.
But first, before we jump into that, we have a participant called Kevin.
Yes, and I did want to point out that Kevin Drum is on as well. He is on the Cultural District side. He is the government liaison person. He is going to help me work with the town and all the various groups within the town.
So Kevin, if you
And
could
Kevin
change-
just finished
Hold
his.
on one sec, please. Kevin, could you change your screen name to your full name so that our recording secretary can get that down?
The full name is Kevin Drum, D-R-U-M.
Okay, Nancy, I hope you get that. Thank you.
Kevin
Boom,
just
boom.
finished a
Yeah.
6-year term on the Cultural Council as well. So there are
Oh.
connections.
And just as general background, I was on the Finance Committee for 5 years and was a Library Board of Trustee member for 10.
And I know
So,
Kevin, and I know Kevin, and he's great. So welcome, Kevin.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. That's
We're not
just,
great also?
yeah, you're all great. You're all great.
Everyone's great.
I think Kevin just awed
Well, we
us
know
with the
you.
number of
Yeah.
years he's put in on boards. So we've invited you here to speak with us because we're really excited and interested about both of your organizations, which in a short while you'll tell us what the difference is. But also because we are looking towards a revitalization of the North Main Street corridor, and we would love to integrate cultural amenities, let me call it that way, because I don't know a better word, in that design, so that we have that was our hope. So why don't I turn it over to you guys, and you can tell us more about who you are. And I think we have until we have quite a bit of time this evening for this, I believe.
It looks like we have till 8:45. 8:45.
Oh dear. So we've eaten up 15 minutes already. My apologies. So I will shut up. Go ahead,
So
please.
do you want me to go? I can quickly, Peter, if you're good, I can give the quick
Yeah, go ahead.
definition of the two, and then maybe we can jump right in. If I can also share a little bit about what we're planning for the upcoming year on the Cultural District, and then Peter, I can send it off to you if you have more to add on the Cultural Council side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Peter and I have been spending some of the time this year doing an awareness campaign and helping people understand, because our Mass Cultural Council came up with these two very creative names, and they themselves get confused between what the cultural district and the cultural council is. So we are not surprised by that. Thankfully, we've been working very well together and thinking that we essentially have a very similar mission. But in terms of Mass Cultural Council and how they define the difference, the Cultural Council is a funding agent. They are the vehicle. Each city and town, each 351 city and town within Massachusetts has a cultural council, and that is how they distribute local arts funding. The cultural district, I believe the last count I had was there's 51 of them in the state, and some, such as Boston, have multiple within. They've got Fenway, and they've got a number of others in the city. It is a recognition by the state that there is a concentration of cultural assets there. And our purpose is to foster the creative economy and the local economy. The way that we look at the Winchester Cultural District is that, yes, we are an economic driver, but we are also an opportunity for community building as well as education. So it's a defined area, the cultural district. There is a map that is registered with the state of MCC, and it's essentially our downtown area plus 4 satellite locations: the Sanborn House, the Winchester Music School, Frightlock Farm, and 50 Cross Street. The downtown area goes from effectively just about the high school all the way down to, I think it's to the post office. And there are 3 different nodes that were defined. There is what they call the village, which is around the common, the viaduct, which follows the train and encompasses most of the businesses. And then there is the river walk that brings you around the 2 ponds along the Aberjona River.
Right.
So that's at least definition wise the difference between the two. In terms, and I'll spend 1 more minute so we can spend most of our time in discussion. Our goals, so I joined a couple of years ago, but I took on the chair this January. And our goal this year was to really start to understand and establish and make this much more of a town institution, so to speak. And we've also been looking to, now that we're out of COVID and we're able to gather more, we've been looking to expand our programming. The last 3 years, we've worked closely with the Griffin Museum to put on Vaudeville. So our goal has been to expand. The first couple of years, it was June to September. And if you look at it, like, the thing that makes me sad right now is when I walk around town, the leaves are down and so is all the art. And there's 3 specks of art in the entire town, which we think is really sad. So our goal is to have art be visible year round. That is one. The other is to work with the town and others around a river walk. It was something that was envisioned when they applied for the cultural district. So we are continuing to socialize that. We are using art installations with temporary activations, so to speak, to test out areas and to see what works and what doesn't work. And then the last thing that we're focused on is formalizing our operations as well as our organization, and looking to formalize ourselves out of fiscal sponsorship from the Griffin and into its own independent 501c3, so that we can more effectively fundraise and be not clogging up the Griffin at the same time. So we're really excited about next year, because as part of our expanding of our calendar, we're looking to have a kickoff of what we're calling the Waterfield Festival, which will include, and we're hoping will start the first annual Waterfield Festival in 2023, which will be year-long, and we'll invite as many of our managing partners to attach to that with a theme of water. So we'll kick off in the spring with Aberjona Day with the Conservation Commission, and Earth Day, and we're talking about creating art out of the junk we're going to pull out of the Aberjona River. And then we'll move into the summer season with all that goes on with Photoville and the Griffin Terra series and everything that's happening in town. And then in the fall and winter, fingers crossed, hopefully maybe the folks here can help us. We will put up temporary sculpture, as well as an augmented reality exhibit. So we're hoping to get into cyber arts and introduce that, so that we can look for more audience, get more people involved, and teach the folks who are not involved. I think that I'm super excited about the augmented reality piece, because it'll allow us to incorporate not only virtual sculpture, but spoken word, history. We can put a tour in. We can envision the river walk virtually. So that those are some things that we're really excited about working on in 2023. I did it. 2 minutes.
Wow.
Peter.
And the Cultural Council. Well, the Cultural Council used to be called the Arts Lottery Council. And it's about, I think the Cultural Council program is about 40 years old. The Cultural District program, the Winchester Cultural District, I think, is about 3 years old. So the Cultural District is the new kid on the block, and it is the block because it's all about the area. Whereas the Cultural Council serves the whole town. It's not just a particular area, but the Cultural Council is a town agency. There are 9 members appointed by the select board. And so we're unpaid town employees. And that has some advantages and has some disadvantages. The cultural district, the way it's structured, it has a lot more flexibility, and it's a lot easier for the cultural district to run activities and to have things to connect the artistic community. The Cultural Council, I first joined the Cultural Council when John McConnell was the chair in the early 2000s. And this is my second run on the Cultural Council. But we have six-year term limits. So actually, my time is pretty much expired, but we're waiting for someone to come and take my place. Then I can leave. Its main task is to give away money. We get an allocation every year from the state. It used to be the money from the lottery, and now it comes from the goodness of the hearts of the legislators. This year we got, I think, close to $8,000. Which is a huge amount, historically speaking, in recent history. We also get an allocation from the town. For the past couple of years, we have been part of the town's budget, and this year we're getting $10,000 from the town's budget.
Wow.
That money, we are going to give some of that money to the cultural district, which gets no formal funding from the town. We've built up some money over the past couple of years of COVID, when there really was very little going on culturally, because everyone was hidden in their houses, and the types of things that we did really couldn't be done, or people had to use a great deal of creativity to do them. We did fund a couple of very interesting remote projects, but anyway. So this year we're going to have a very big distribution of money. And we're going to have a meeting tomorrow and probably decide how that gets gets done. We could maybe give up to $30,000 away this year. And hope probably a lot of that will go to the, well, not a lot, but a good portion of that will go to the cultural district to help with this Waterfield Festival. So I think there's a real question, not just for people to figure out what's the difference between the cultural council and the cultural district, but how these two agencies or organizations will work together. We're still working that out. But Hilda and I have been working really closely together, and I'm very enthusiastic about the district and the potential that it has for greatly increasing the amount of artistic activity, cultural activity in the town.
Right.
And I've been looking at the master plan too, thinking of it since we were talking to the planning board, and I found a few things that really directly connect with this river walk that Hilda was talking about, and some of these other ideas that we have for the cultural district.
Great.
So I think there's a great deal of potential there.
Absolutely.
You always get on our good side by saying you've looked at the master plan. That's a freebie, but we'll take it.
Yeah. Well,
We have a cross-reference actually, complete with, you know, the things that because, and that's an important aspect because the district and the council at the same time, we do add to the master plan. So it's really important. I think of the first meeting I had with Brian, that was the prep work of, you know, how do we fit in, because we need to, that's a really critical component, which is the reason why we had, as we were shifting towards 501c3 and formalization, we've been starting to operate like a nonprofit. And as we've created the bylaws, or drafted them, that we're working through them with Beth and town council to make sure that we formalize how we work with the town. We thought it was important to have Kevin's role because so much of what we do impacts and has, you know, we're on the district itself is town land. We are constantly looking to create art and put art out on town land or in areas in public spaces. So it's really important to us to make sure that we're aligned to what the plan is for the town.
The district is really an agreement between the town and the state, and where the select board is the agency or the organization that established with that petition for the cultural district. So the select board is the final authority here, and the district itself is the operator of the cultural district. Hilda's organization is the operator. Now, and Brian was very much involved in establishing the cultural district. Part of that process was to take a survey, an inventory of cultural assets. And I looked at the map which lists the cultural assets and some of the things, and I didn't see anything on North Main Street. So when you're talking about North Main Street, that's maybe an issue. I think we need to sort of create some ideas, get some creative ideas about things that we would institute, because I don't know what is there.
Yeah,
If I could just.
North of Swanton Street. I mean,
If I could
north
just
of
interject.
Skillings Road.
If I could just interject, the state is the one that draws, in conjunction with the town, draws where the borders are of the district. And they don't accept as an example that the entire town's a district, a cultural district. That would be really easy if they would do that, but they tend to be pretty easy with their rules towards us compared to their rules towards the cultural council. But they're pretty strict on how the district lines are drawn.
That being said, we haven't asked them to change them yet.
And I would,
Correct.
I think I am learning a lot about the importance of place to the cultural district. And so I think that is something that
It is.
We need to understand, because so maybe we create place along North Main Street, and then after a while we can go and ask for a district because we've created, it sounds like it has to be existent or extant, as it were, in order for it to be part of a district rather than aspirational.
Yeah, I think that was important in drawing the lines.
Well, I guess my question, that was definitely true in the establishment. The question is, I know that I had asked the question, we had invited Carolyn Cole, who was the new cultural district coordinator at MCC, to visit. So right when this past summer, when Photoville launched, we had them walk through. And I did ask the question, how hard is it to change? And she says they definitely can, you can change them, because I was curious as to whether or not we can even include somebody who's like on the across the street that's outside of the line. And so
Right.
those
Right.
So, Diab, I love what Peter and Hilda are talking about with North Main Street, and I wondered, with your permission, if I could sort of wax rhapsodic about what my vision of North Main Street could be with regards to a cultural center or focal point for our town. Is
So
that-
I think that you can wax rhapsodic, of course. I just want, we have approximately 15 minutes left. And so I just, let's just make sure there's time for everyone to.
All right, let me be brief instead of
Yeah.
rhapsodic. That a big point, as far as my perspective on the revitalization of this corridor, this mixed use corridor, is to address the needs of the residents and the users of that corridor to make it a humane and human scale space. And so there's been references to pocket parks, and there's been references to having the sidewalks be more aligned with a complete street model, which you can look up separately, but complete streets are streets that equally address the needs of pedestrians, cyclists, and automobiles. And in that model, there's this section of the sidewalk that is, I think, I forget the word now, but I think it's called like an amenity zone or something. And I think that in addition to pocket parks, there's opportunities all up both sides of Main Street, 1 mile up, 1 mile back, to create a continuum of a cultural experience. And maybe it's seasonal, maybe it rotates out, maybe, I don't know, I defer. But I do see the goals of the North Main Street revitalization are related to safety of pedestrians and bicyclists and families walking strollers, more housing in town, so that more people who would aspire to live in Winchester would have a choice about where to move to, whether they qualify for affordable housing or not. And a growth in the commercial sector in response to that increased housing and vitality. And in some language in our master plan, there's an extension of the downtown. And to me, that extension can take the form of artistic expression, especially if it's graphically packaged as this too is the cultural district. So it's appealing, and it's enlivening, and it's gratifying, and it's a way when you're just schlubbing your way on a Monday down to the train station, or waiting at the bus stop at the upper end of North Main Street, there's something that sparks joy in your human existence. So there, I almost waxed rhapsodic, sorry.
I love it. I love that thought. One question that I have, because I know that I've had some conversations, I think at least with Brian, I don't know if Dia, but we had this conversation. Mary McKenna, who initiated the cultural district, also talked about artist housing and space for creative, like studio space or anything like that. Could that possibly be included as part of the plan?
Let us keep that in mind. I think it's a little early days in
Yeah, it's a
terms of,
specific, but
but certainly we can try to we will keep that in mind and make sure we don't forget about it.
Yeah, I'd like to
Great.
keep it on the plate. I think it's a great suggestion.
So one of the principles of the cultural district is walkability. And one of the core things about this project that the cultural district is really focused on since the beginning is the river walk. And that is making the area along the river a walkable area, going from, say, the post office, where more or less the bike path is now, but from the post office over to the high school, at Shore Road.
Right.
Now, how do you get from there to the North Main Street area? That will require maybe another set of thinking, but there's a connection there.
Yes, there's an
Yeah.
opportunity for connections.
We
Absolutely.
just need to think about it.
The
It's
sidewalks.
a tiny town. It's 6 square miles.
I know. Yeah.
It's
No,
walkable.
I'm thinking about it. And, the Cultural Council has this project, which we are trying to get off the ground and which will be happening next spring, of the utility box decorating. And there are a couple of utility boxes along that area and in that
Right.
place, which are part of that program. So that will be
also-
something artistic in that area.
And I can also imagine some kind of signage that is not exhibit specific, but
Yeah.
feeling and permanent, that says you are in one of Winchester's cultural districts, right? And
Well, we have 4 signs up in town now, sort of outlining the district already.
yeah, right.
But
Right.
you want them on North Main Street, right?
Well, if a cultural district can be incorporated into the planning board's work to rezone and revise the streetscape, rezone the zoning and revise the streetscape of North Main Street, to me, it would make a lot of sense to include in that sort of revisioning, repackaging, this idea that, well, yeah, it's a cultural district.
We could think about increasing participation in art in August to that area, for example.
Right. For
Yeah.
example, right.
Or
Okay.
there used to be a frame shop right up north there.
Oh, there still is. He's still
There
there.
still is. Yeah.
It's-
All right, there you go.
I thought he
So that's
turned
a
into an
cultural business.
It turned into there's a new frame shop. and the
Yeah,
old frame
Metro,
shop
There
is now
is.
upholstery.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now
that's
let's-
right. That's right. The one
Um,
that was there is now a wine shop.
Okay, so any other comments from the rest of the board?
Can I add one thing before you jump into that, just to throw it out there? I know I breezed over the term augmented reality. Are people familiar with what that is?
Uh-oh.
So it's the most popular thing is probably Pokemon Go, but it basically uses your phone camera and you are able to place objects that are not there, virtual pieces, but you're seeing them against reality backdrop. The reason why I wanted to interject with this particular piece is that a lot of architectural firms are actually using this. You'll see this in online furniture stores where you see it in the room. So so our thinking next year is our exhibit's going to have some of that. And I mention it because if you're thinking about North Main Street, this may be a tool that we can collectively work together on using, on envisioning what North Main Street could look like.
And could feel like.
And that is our purpose of doing the Riverwalk next year. That Riverwalk exhibit is to show people, if we built this out, you can see it. So I just throw that out for an idea. So I'll zip it. We can talk further at a different time.
Okay. I Ching, did you want to go?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on the idea of the walkability, and Sally, your idea of, walking up and down it and sort of claiming it. And I think of the Emerald Necklace as, that idea, like connecting from the Central Business District into various nodes up and down Main Street. And we could call it something else, the rainbow necklace, whatever, to signify a more liveliness of the streets. But I think of, places like even Union Square in Somerville, like I lived there 20 some years ago, and it was just a highway, but over time they've like taken over the underpasses of the highways and had parties there, sort of taken over these spots where you couldn't see, art and culture and life, but eventually it becomes that, right? Because we take over the public realm again. And I was just thinking up and down North Main Street that we could definitely categorize the town assets, right? What properties we do own, so like those little strip parks and stuff. But more importantly, the streets are part of town property, and so to continue to push that and to take more and more of that and highlight those possibilities would be really exciting. And I think that working with you guys would be really, really fun too, to start to envisioning like a necklace of connection for a town that way.
Love it.
Nick, you look like.
Oh, yeah, I was just wanted to just get a recap on what our takeaway should be, and here again, how we can take action. I mean, particularly on places like North Main Street. I know people have brought up creating a space at its human scale, and the districts will come. But I guess I wanted to just hear again what you hope to get out of the meeting with us, and what we can do to advance the cause of the cultural district in Winchester.
Oh, boy.
Well, or answer a question of your choice to that end. I'll put that out there.
My perception is really this is just giving us food for thought. The North Main Street area is not part of the cultural district, and we can think about how to make it part. And I would love to maybe do a little inventory of artistic possibilities in that area, is to find out what artists live up there and what the potentials are for placing art in that area. That's what I'd like to do.
And one thought I have is we do have Bolino Park up there.
Yeah.
And maybe we could do, we as in the Cultural Council or somebody could sponsor an event or some artwork for that park. So
Yeah.
that would be an actual resource that you have to some degree now that's probably underutilized, but could really become something more artistic and quicker than maybe some of your more long-term plans.
I could see that.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
I think you should also take a look at, I know it's in my neighborhood, so Horn Pond Brook Bikeway, which goes right along Horn Pond Brook from Lake Street all the way up to Middlesex. It's this beautiful short greenway, goes behind the DPW. You can see where the DPW keeps all their trucks and stuff. It's a lot of fun. But in any case, it's this little blast of nature, which I think could use more than the few granite seating areas it has now. But that's another, it's right off, it's kind of parallel to North Main Street, but there it is.
It's a safe bike parallel.
Yeah, and it's where a lot of people, there's actually a lot of local artists who use it. There are some kids who draw chalk marks all over the pavement and leave really funny statements. So there's sort of a local art hanging out there already.
Again, that's not in the cultural district.
No, it's not.
But it has lots of potential, and the Cultural Council can certainly fund projects going in there. And let me just mention also, the Cultural Council has a grant program called micro grants, where you can apply for $300 and fund, hire a band or hire an artist to do something anywhere in the town.
Yeah,
that might be a good idea. Maybe have a concert at Bolino Park, or maybe have an artwork placed along that bike path, for $300.
I'm wondering if part of, so we want to encourage use of public spaces. I wonder how many people know of all the little parks across town which are available for doing that. So I can think of at least a small park near where I live on Canal Street that's also on Hemingway. There are these little pocket things that maybe you could challenge people to say, here are the places around town that you could do this on. Think about doing something there and apply for something to do it. So sort of, raise awareness of what's available in people's neighborhoods, because that way we could discover other parts of town that we don't know exist.
Actually, I think that's kind of an inspiring idea. Yeah.
So
I
unfortunately,
I have one question.
yeah.
Where does the train station, like, do parts of the viaduct go up the north? Like, where does the Rotary fit as part of? I guess the Rotary's already part of the cultural district, or I guess the question is from a planning board perspective, what authority do you have over the train stations themselves? Because I think that's another opportunity for us to place our both temporarily while we're under construction as well as permanently. So
Speaking of parties in the viaduct in Union Square, or in the overpasses.
That's MBTA property. Am I right on that, Brian?
Sorry, you're talking about the spur there?
Or just the viaduct, the one that goes right through town center? That's MBTA property.
That's town, and it's mostly MBTA, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
But that doesn't preclude there being a tenacious effort to put art in.
Oh, no, yeah, we definitely want to program that space for sure.
Under-
We
do.
want to program
We
the
do.
space.
Yeah.
A
We're
light,
very
light
enthusiastic
show
about doing
underneath.
that.
And lights,
And-
yes.
And
Yeah.
to be honest, if you had, a projection system, you could project art on the MBTA property. I don't think they would chase you away. But I know they do that in a lot of places around the world, usually as protest, but
The one point I want to really make sure we go back to is the question of whether we can encourage the creation of live, work, artist housing spaces on North Main Street. And it's a big topic. I just want to make sure it doesn't roll off the table.
I think we just have to make a note of it and make sure that because that's going to come in when we talk about what the zoning is going to allow, and
Yes.
certainly, yeah. We got to go very quickly.
We do.
Richard Leaf, you have a something.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. Just for 1 minute. For the people here with the cultural district, I'm an architect in town, but I'm actually sitting in as a representative of the Chamber of Commerce. And I believe you all presented to the chamber a few months ago.
Yes.
But when you did, I don't think there was as much discussion about music and events as I just heard in the last 5 or 10 minutes. And I just want to tell you, there's a real synergy opportunity. The chamber is kind of very active. Rich Mucci on the select board. There's a lot of people trying to program events,
Yes,
music, art related, all for the overall goal of bringing people to town, bringing businesses, bringing shoppers to the businesses, but just creating energy. And I don't remember how we all left it with you with the chamber, but I need to go back to the chamber and kind of, maybe you need to go back to the chamber too. But
I'm happy to come back. We've been working with Dana and
you got to get to Dot.
And also with Rich Mucci. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get to Rich. You got to get to Dot. There's a tremendous effort that everybody's making.
We've been working with
these events and art would be
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, these are rapidly developing things. It's happening all the time. So yeah.
Well, I thoroughly sanction the planning board, and I don't want to speak for the whole planning board. I'll speak for myself. I sanction the planning board engaging with all the other community, or I guess they're appointed boards and committees in town that are working to make the town human and lively. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Before we leave, I just wanted to thank Brian also publicly. I've been meeting with Brian since the beginning of the year, and you have been an absolute pleasure, and you've taught me a ton of things as this is my first foray into town involved activities like this, and I wish you the best of luck. I spoke to my friend living in Danvers and said that they're very lucky to be getting you. So sad to
thanks.
see you leave.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Thanks,
Me
Peter.
too.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks everyone for coming.
Thank
Really
you for
appreciate it.
inviting us.
And we will definitely be speaking again.
Okay.
Good.
Great.
Look,
Excellent.
Look
we
forward
look forward to it.
Thanks.
Okay.
Sounds
Bye.
good.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Right.
Bye-bye.
So we now turn to something a little more serious. No, I don't know what I'm going to call it. So hi, Jay. Jay Tellerman from Town Council is with us, and we're going to be diving into section 355. Did I get that right? Yes. And so as a recap, this is the part of our town zoning, which discusses, I think, I don't want to, I'm not going to say what it discusses because I'll get it wrong. I'll use the wrong legal terminology. So I think the key thing here is that there was a meeting between Jay and a number of people on a discussion around a certain property. And it turns out that the long-standing practice of allowing people to apply for special permits seems not to be, in particular instances, seems not to be borne out by the language of the zoning bylaw in section 355. And that is something I think that the planning board needs to discuss if they want to, if they want to change that language so that it does correspond to historical practice. And if that is the case, hopefully Jay will have some suggestions as to what the language could be. And Brian had the brilliant idea of, we actually had a petition that was supposed to be for us today, which highlighted this particular instance of where this might come in. So Brian, do you want to do a brief lead in on that, and then we can dive into the language?
Sure, just super quick. Jay Tellerman of Town Council, came up with a few word changes with the language. This was months ago when we had talked about what would we need, and would basically just explicitly say that what we would require is a special permit if it's a non-conforming property or not. What we're here tonight is to kind of talk about some of the policy potentially objectives. But in terms of what those choices were, maybe that didn't get into your packet, but it was from several months ago. But all it was is basically explicitly saying what we want. Not what we wanted. One idea is to the language that would it would show what existing practice is, which would basically mean a non-conforming property would be able to create a new structure in the form of a shed, for example, through a special permit and not a variance. But we could go through. I don't want to go straight in to that ZBA petition. Jay, do you think it makes sense, or are you familiar with this current ZBA petition, which is Mystic Valley Parkway? And it was basically an existing shed that now they're going to be making it part of the house. And so they're in.
I don't think I'm familiar with it. They're going to be, there's an existing shed and they're going to be attaching it to the house.
They're going to be putting the shed down and putting a new structure that's going to, it's going to attach to the main house now.
By a breezeway.
Yeah, by a breezeway, exactly. But maybe they're, well, again, I don't know what the exact goals for the meeting, other than to kind of discuss what the policy objectives could be. Sure. But the language, I think, to Dieb's point, I think The language is pretty clear. It's whether or not we just say it's explicitly a special permit or not. And I think tonight would be, the goal would be to kind of make sure everyone understands what the issue is. Yeah.
So why don't we pop up 355 then?
Okay,
Let's
I'll put it
just in case everyone hasn't been studying this assiduously over the last several weeks.
Memorizing.
Memorizing, yes. So there it is, 355. And the key, I'm not going to, Jay, do you want to go through and just maybe give us the key statements in here and what the limitations are, or what the interpretation is now versus what it was previously?
Right.
So, and I think now and then we'll back up to go forward a little bit. I don't think that there's any one interpretation now. I think the reason we're here having this discussion is because there's more than one interpretation of what the existing language is, and how those differing interpretations correspond with what prior practice has been, what the goals were in the 2012 changes, and what the goals could be going forward for this section. So this bylaw, as has been told to me, came to its current form in 2012, I think, thereabouts. And Brian, correct me on dates if I'm wrong on that. At that time, we were about 3/4 of the way through a string of appellate cases that really changed or kind of evolved the way we think about changes to pre-existing non-conforming structures under the statute. And it appeared that this language was designed to kind of take into consideration the third major case, the Gale versus Gloucester case, where it said that a special permit would be the most that would ever be required for a single or two-family house if you were expanding it. However, there was one more case to be decided, and it was decided in 2014, a Chatham case, which I had a little bit of a hand in. And what that case said is that, yes, what Gale versus Gloucester said is true, except where there's a new nonconformity, not an increase in an existing nonconformity, but a new nonconformity. And this language is a little bit ambiguous about that situation. My understanding from this language at the time was that the town, which has a fair number of petitions to expand pre-existing non-conforming single and two-family houses, of which there are a ton in town, and it intended through sections 1, 2, 3, and all the numbered sections here to create situations where certain expansions were as a matter of right. And then what it said is, hey, all the other ones that don't fit into this box are kind of special permits that appeared to be, based upon how this was interpreted from 2012, kind of moving forward, to be just the others would only be like a special permit. However, this language doesn't address the situation where there's a new nonconformity. The final paragraph, if we could scroll to that final paragraph there. I don't know who's controlling the screen.
Brian.
Yeah, in any other case, the Board of Appeals made by special permit allows such reconstruction, extension, alteration, or change where it determines that the proposed modification. So the language in any other case, I think, could be interpreted to mean really anything that isn't the by right in under 1, 2, and 3 is going to be at most a special permit. However, above in a prior section, it talks about new nonconformities, and new nonconformities aren't addressed at all in here. And under that Chatham case, it suggested that new nonconformities, so go in 354, it talks about, granted, it does not apply to single or two family structures necessarily. But the case stands for the proposition that, okay, when you do have a new nonconformity, then that's going to be a variance. So it came to our attention that there was an interpretation, perhaps by the Board of Appeals, but maybe even before that, that, okay, 355 is all well and good, but if you're going to add a new nonconformity, something that doesn't exist as nonconforming now, then that's going to be a variance and not a special permit. So if the intent was to kind of maintain, or to eliminate any ambiguity and maintain a stance whereby in Winchester, what we want is a certain amount of things by right, numbers 1, 2, and 3, and anything else, the most that it would require under that last paragraph is a special permit. No variance required for single and two family structures that you are modifying, expanding, even if you are coming up with a new nonconformity. So that was kind of the feeling that was something we needed to fix. However, I wanted to leave open the possibility that, well, maybe we want to follow, maybe the town will choose to follow kind of what that Deirdre versus Chatham case said, and like, okay, this is good, but let's carve out new nonconformities and actually require a variance there. I'm Switzerland on the policy. I think you all can decide what you want. My understanding was that, hey, we want to preserve what we've been doing. So I drafted an amendment. I promised Brian that I would do it in 10 words or less. I think I came in right at 10. And so I added a few words here and there to make it so that no variance would be required. I could either share that or Brian could if Brian has it handy.
Why don't,
I think one of the things that we need to consider is who is currently relying on this wording. I know that we understand that the current language is imperfect. You could say broken.
I wouldn't call it broken.
Okay, but it's imperfect enough that we're here today.
It's ambiguous enough. Yeah. I mean, I think there's an ambiguity. I think let's put it this way. I think I could defend, and I think this is what I said to Brian when we were talking about it, maybe even to Diab, that I could defend either version of the interpretation, but I don't think it's ever any good when, say, the building department takes a slightly different view than the zoning board, which is going to get a lot of these applications, which takes a slightly different view than what the planning board, who's most normally the author of these provisions, thinks. So I think that there should be an effort to kind of nail it down one way or the other, whichever way you want to go.
Well, I guess I just wanted to make the point that whatever state it's in, however imperfect, it's being relied on and it's being used so there's some reliance on the way it is. So I think if we are going to propose some changes, we need to, it looks like the Board of Appeals relies on it. So I think we need to share those changes with them and get their comments. I think I wouldn't be comfortable with making changes unless we knew that those that are currently relying on the language as it is are not going to feel that they're, being something taken away that they're currently in reliance on.
Jay, what is the thing that is the I would say nominally controversial change to this law that would take away this thing that people have been relying on? I'm still not clear on this at all.
So I think Sally, the thing here that we're talking about, and I want to respond quickly to what Nick, is it Nick or is it Nicholas?
Nick, yeah.
Nick,
yeah.
okay, I want to make sure I get that right. Is that the zoning board has suggested that, look, we're interpreting it the way we see it and based on the cases. If the planning board wants to change it, then fine, they'll probably have a comment or two on it. But the commentary I got from the zoning board on it, I don't want to speak for David or anyone else on this, was that, hey, planning board, do your thing. Let's clean this up or whatever. And maybe they'll comment that they want it to get stricter or less strict. I don't know, but they recognize that there's differing interpretations too. And they also recognize the province of the planning board, at least in the comments I had with them, to kind of work through these issues. Okay.
Sure.
So,
no, but it would be helpful to have them look at the draft.
No question.
Yeah, and just make sure that we're not, putting something in place that they're going to be angry or whatever. That is going to be kind of,
yeah,
I guess.
I think we should want to know how you should want to know how they interpret it, to be honest, whether or not they're angry or not that we're trying to not that you would try to anger anybody, but the idea is that this is a policy decision and you want to make sure that the ZBA is interpreting it the way that you would want it to be interpreted, or at least make it very clear that it's not left up to interpretation.
Right. Currently, I think there's a predisposition, and I don't know how many of these cases they've actually decided, so it's not like a big sample size. I think there's a predisposition for them to essentially run any new nonconformities through the variance process. So it kind of brings me to Sally's question here, and I think this is the difference. And then I want to also add one other piece to this too, but the difference in the interpretations only comes up when there's a new nonconformity, not someone increasing an existing nonconformity. So let's put it in a simple context here. So let's say you have a house on a lot that is basically conforming, and with the exception of the right side setback, and the house is partially in the right side setback. We know that the most under the case law, taking aside your zoning bylaw, the most under the case law that would be required if you wanted to expand further into that right side setback than it's already non-conforming in would be a special permit under the cases. That's the Gale versus Gloucester case. If, however, on the left side of the house, where the side setback is conforming, you wanted to expand the house so it now went into the left side setback, i.e. a new nonconformity, then you're in a situation where it's a brand new nonconformity, and under the Chatham case, that's a variance. And that's the situation, that's the cut line where we're in now. I don't think anyone's debating numbers 1, 2, and 3. Those are pretty plain on their face, where things are allowed as a matter of right. The question is, with this last paragraph, if you're creating a new nonconformity, is this even covered? Is that in any other case covering that, or the fact that it's a new nonconformity is something that's not contemplated there, and we have to revert to the case law? So the zoning board has considered or questioned, at the very least, whether or not they should be requiring a variance for a new nonconformity rather than a simple special permit, as is suggested in that final paragraph. And that's kind of the crossroads where we find ourselves. Now, I do want to add, and I don't want to get off track a little bit, this bylaw as it's written right now and its implementation is significantly more permissive than most towns do it for their expansions of pre-existing non-conforming single and two-family houses. I think that's totally fine, and I think it fits within the character of Winchester and what people's goals are. And again, I don't take a policy position on that, that's fine, but it is remarkably generous compared to what other towns do as it applies to single and two-family houses. Let's call that a good thing. And I think the for those that might suggest that it's too permissive and we need more regulation, what I would also point to is the fact that under the current bylaw, the current zoning bylaw, you have some pushback that is actually somewhat more remarkably strict, where houses, single-family houses over a certain size could be subjected to what in Winchester is a very rigorous site plan review process.
Right.
So even though you get a big break under 355, as it's been interpreted, if you have a big house and you want to change something, you got to go through a lot. So it's not like people are getting everything for nothing. So if folks are suggesting, wow, you're going to make this even more permissive, or wow, it's already too permissive, you've got this other bylaw, which the zoning board, as you all know, treats very seriously and really puts people through their paces for larger houses that are going through changes. So there's I just want to, because there's balance in these things as you think about how you want to go forward. So I just wanted to make sure that that was in the background.
I have a question about the variance provisions, and Brian, could you scroll up there to the variance language, please? So my understanding is that practically getting a variance is extremely difficult, so that if we choose to shift more things to a variance, we're essentially putting the kibosh on whatever it is that we shift to the variance column. The other thing is I'm trying to understand the language here. So Jay, when you're talking about increasing, so I see the language that says increase in existing nonconformity. So when you talked about in your example where you have one side of the house which is, encroaching upon a setback, and you wish to, you pushing that side of the house further into the setback, I think you said that was not increasing in existing nonconformity.
No, it's increasing in existing nonconformity on the right side of the house where it's already nonconforming. But the most for a single and two-family house that would be required is a special permit.
But doesn't this language here say that under that instance, it would actually require a variance?
So don't forget 354 applies both to residential and non-residential or non-single and two-family structures. So 355 provides additional relief for single and two-family structures. 354 applies to all structures. So that's
so now I'm getting confused again. So if 355 is carving out some relief, why does the last sentence or the first sentence in the last paragraph then essentially not provide relief in the case? Is it because this thing doesn't say anything about creating a new nonconformity?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah,
okay.
I think that because the lack of language, well, first of all, there was a case that was decided after that language, so I think that throws it a little into chaos. But the last paragraph of 355 says about a lot of things, reconstruction, extension, alteration, or change, those kinds of things. But what it doesn't discuss is creation of a new nonconformity.
Okay.
And there's a school of thought in statutory interpretation that says when you would omit language in one section that is in another section, that omission is supposed to be deemed to be purposeful. Now, again, I think you can interpret this either way, and that's why I'm have been a little concerned that there's an ambiguity. I think that if we were all rowing in the same direction and applied this so that no variance would ever be required for a single or two-family house, that would be one thing. But when you have two boards that are potentially taking a different position and the building department perhaps taking a different position, and then people out in the public, someone who might oppose a project, perhaps taking a different position, it makes some sense to maybe clarify that, which was the purpose of my proposed amendment.
And your proposed amendment would say what? I'm sorry, I just need to track back to that.
Brian, do you have it, or do you?
Brian is saying he's got it in a second.
There we go. So I just kind of brought the add new nonconformity stuff in here. That's all. I wanted to make sure that 355 covered the situation for single and two family structures of new nonconformities in addition to everything else, if that was the intention.
So I think this is a good place to segue into the discussion of the policy that the board wants to pursue. I hope that everyone has had an idea, an understanding of the ambiguities right now. And so I think right now we have to decide whether we want to move forward with how we resolve the ambiguity. Do we resolve it in terms of past practice, or do we resolve it in terms of a stricter application and shifting these things that previously had gone to special permits to variances?
Wait a minute, so the changes that are here do not resolve the ambiguity. We need to make additional changes.
No.
No,
This would resolve it, Nick.
this
Okay,
would resolve it.
and this is something that we would share with the ZBA and get their comments.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
this would resolve it in terms of maintaining current practice.
But this doesn't change 3.5.4, where variance is required for non-residential.
Right, but this applies only to single and two family and provides the additional protection. So I don't view it as a conflict. I consider it to be additive to the zoning bylaws, not setting up a conflict.
Right, the
Frank,
fact that
can you
this,
close the okay box there?
sure,
Thank you.
the fact that this is talking just about single and two family home, that kind of takes over from that 354. So it's basically like, this is true for variances, however, which is true for some residential that's not single and two family, is essentially what I think. That's the clarification, I Ching, is that that 354 is basically, we make it clear that it's for anything other than single and two family homes. So it's for residential, that could be multifamily or apartment house or garden apartment house or whatever, or any other commercial. But for single and two family homes, this is how we deal with them, because that's the vast majority of the homes that are, or the vast majority of buildings that are in town.
So let me see the beginning of that intro paragraph, because it's off. Okay, non-conforming.
So this would also resolve that question about single and duplexes trying to construct, say, an ADU on a non-conforming lot.
Yeah, this clarifies that. It clarifies. Well, it does clarify. It can clarify that. For instance, if you had a lot that had insufficient frontage and you didn't have a shed there, and you're trying to put a new structure, for example.
So the most that would be required of you is a special permit rather than a variance.
In that particular case, I think we could make that happen. Yeah.
Yeah, the issue of a detached ADU is a different problem,
right,
or challenge that Brian and I have had some conversations on, that I think we would need to do an additional fix if you wanted to make those easier to build on non-conforming lots.
So I think the underlying principles or values that are guiding this are related to density. And if we're willing to step away from setbacks or compromise setbacks as a regular habit, we are by default encouraging density, more density. Is that right?
Not necessarily, because you're not increasing the number of living units. By density, do you mean the amount of the ratio of open space to building area footage?
I think in this case I am, although your
Okay.
point is well taken that density usually refers to units per acre.
Yeah, and then nonconformities isn't just about setbacks, I believe, right? It could be about
Right,
other
it could be, I mean,
nonconformities.
again, this is trying to reflect how the building department and the ZBA has acted for about a dozen years.
Much more. Richard is gesticulating.
Oh,
Well, so
please, Richard, I need to hear you.
technically
Richard,
it's
you
been
are-
about more like 25 or so, but since there was a rezoning, there was a recodification in 2012 that changed a few things.
Can I talk?
Yes, you can talk, but very quickly, very shortly.
I'll try to be really quick. But I do want to give you like two different perspectives. You know, so I don't know if any of you realize it, but my wife and I have been practicing since the mid-90s, and we've been going before the Zoning Board of Appeals since about 1999. So like more than 20 years. And I would say up till the current members of the ZBA in this current issue has been arising about the language and how to interpret the language. Basically for 20 years, the way that it's proceeded is that if a property or a house on a property had any nonconformity, insufficient lot width, insufficient size of lot for that district, too close to any setback. In other words, if it didn't conform on the right side, that was an entree into a special permit. And so this has been going on since 1999, 2000. The more important thing I want to say to you, and this is a little bit of maybe institutional memory, and I'm not sure I'm totally the right person to explain this, but the way I understood this from 20 plus years ago was from Josh Alper, who was a select man at that time, you know, on the select board. And my understanding was that the town meeting charged the Zoning Board of Appeals with encouraging homeowners to modernize their homes and bring them into the 21st century. And it was all about older homes, you know, 100-year-old homes on 100-year-old lots, having really small kitchens, not having master suites, not having mudrooms, not having family entries, not having family rooms. And so there's a much bigger discussion, and I'm obviously biased as an architect, but there's a much bigger discussion that I think has gotten lost by everybody these days, and it's not anybody's fault. And I'm not sure how to reconstruct the institutional memory, but I'm being very sincere in saying this. I think everybody's missing a big point. And the big point I want to say to you is most of the houses that we work on were built 100 years ago or 80 years ago or 120 years ago, and they're all on really small lots. And often they're really small houses on really small lots. So yes, you can say it's about density, and that is a legitimate concern about not having a house too close to another house. But if somebody in town has a 1,500 or an 1,800 square foot house, and they're trying to just get a fourth bedroom or maybe trying to get an eat-in kitchen, that was what all of this was about 20 years ago, was helping people get their houses up to kind of Winchester standards. So anyway, that's my piece, is that all of this is very unsettling to me. I don't even know how to proceed right now. I've got about 3 projects to put in front of the ZBA, and I'm like waited with bated breath to see how all of this plays out.
Thank you. I think that was really valuable. I mean, I have made up my mind on the policy direction that I would like to see the board go. I think it would be useful if tonight, if we think we can come to a consensus on that direction, that would be useful. Does anyone else want to say something more?
Question is, does it have to go through town meeting to get this fixed?
Yes.
Okay.
And this would be something that we would propose for next spring.
Right.
So I don't know how that helps with the ZBA at the moment. Certainly if this board has a consensus as to where we want to go, maybe that would be sufficient to have, if we decide, whichever way this board has a consensus towards, that would be a message to the ZBA as to how they might proceed, barring passage of new language at town meeting. So why don't we have a discussion about policy? If people feel that we need more time, of course, we can schedule more time, but I think we at least know one direction and the language.
I think I know where I would go. And I do agree with Richard that this is, if variants are pretty onerous for property owners, the special permit seems like the right path to go to for this, because these old buildings really need to modernize and change. And with every change, if you have to go through a variance, then I think that just makes it a really difficult place to be for property owners to do anything in this town. And I think that would be undue onerosity.
Onerousness. Unduly onerous.
Thank you.
Nick or Kurt? Oh, Brian, you're waving your hand. Is that a point of order?
No, I don't have a point of order, but I had just had some comments.
Well, why don't we see if Nick or Kurt, if you want to, do you have any questions that might help? Or do you feel like you need more time to understand what the policy directions might be?
I mean, I guess my feeling is that I'd like to circulate some drafts, and I'd like to get a sense of.
We can certainly circulate a draft once we've decided what our policy is going to be.
I mean, my sense is that the language that's presented fixes the problem. And I'm reluctant to make a change to the intent without having just a better. I just don't feel that qualified to understand the consequences, intended or otherwise, of a much more substantive change than merely making the correction. And I think I would support making this correction, but not taking it further, in my opinion.
Okay. Kurt?
Yeah, I'm still sort of processing this and just trying to understand. I think if you just talk about the way people are speaking, I think sort of what I Ching described is generally the sentiment I agree with, which is that, there should be a process, which I think there has been historically, to ensure, changes to homes that are effectively nonconformities, but maybe not worsening a nonconformity, are evaluated, objectively and, controlled, to some extent. But I don't think making it extremely challenging to I guess alter one's I mean, I think I Ching said it better than I could say it. I think I agree with what she said. I think we're in a town where there's a lot of non-conforming structures and a lot of small non-conforming lots, and I think that people have to deal with lots of challenges. And I think as part of the process, my understanding is, like, neighbors have an opportunity to be heard. Like, this board evaluates the merits of what's being proposed and tries to be thoughtful to weigh all the considerations and make decisions in those cases. And I think it feels to me like my general sense is the process seems to work. The outcomes seem to generally be pretty good.
So I'm gonna make a statement, and you can tell me if I'm completely wrong. I think that there is a consensus that the board wants to maintain the current policy of affording people special permits rather than variances. And that we would like the language in 355 to be changed to continue that paradigm. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what you're hearing from me.
Dave,
Okay. Why don't we just we'll just take a vote to make it formal, and then the language, I think, we'll leave up to legal. I think Jay's language looks like it's the minimum required to get there, but it may change based upon further thought. But the policy is to continue current practice. And so let's do it. I Ching,
aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Sally.
I still don't get it. I don't know. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. What is?
I'm going to say that I.
What are your concerns?
Well, if the reason that somebody comes before the town to request a variance is because they have a currently conforming structure that they're proposing to add a nonconformity to, by virtue of the fact that the Zoning Board of Appeals would grant that nonconformity, they're essentially saying that our laws of conformity, aka the zoning bylaws, are on a case-by-case basis malleable. And why would we not instead, or not, perhaps not instead, but why would it not happen that we would respond to the data of all of the requests of putting in nonconformities, whether it's a new nonconformity on an existing lot or a new nonconformity on a complying lot? Why wouldn't we say, let's change the zoning bylaw instead? I just don't, I mean, this whole thing is pushing against.
Yeah, I think it's premature to have a vote without actually looking at the language. That's my.
So let me hone in on something that Sally said, and I'm not sure if this is where you were going. So I think that, so first of all, avoidance of variances can be a good policy in a way, because they're just, you never really can grant them and be assured them. But what you may be highlighting here, Sally, is the discrepancy that's been created through case law on some of these situations. If I have a completely conforming single or two-family house, completely conforming, current, so 355 does not apply at all, but I add a new nonconformity to it, I need a variance. Period.
And why?
And the houses that don't comply can get away with something less.
Yes. So, Sally, are you arguing that you think that there should be more flexibility for a conforming house to basically get through a special permit process, add a nonconformity in lieu of a variance? Like we should make it more flexible.
Well, I'm saying that instead of doing it on a case-by-case basis, let us understand the aggregate nature of those cases and say, are we dealing with a situation here where, because of a range of geopolitical, socioeconomic, whatever you want to call it, forces, we should be looking at our zoning bylaw?
But Sally, you know how long it takes to change your zoning bylaws, and we're talking about like 6,500 square foot lots versus 5,000 square foot lot. If you want to start changing that, it will take many
years. Yeah, no, I'm not opposed to the note.
So the existing bylaw too, I will say, nothing about adding this language or add new nonconformities changes the situation that I just discussed. That, and this has been somewhat warped by these recent cases, that folks with a barely conforming property but completely conforming have a worse row to hoe than a non-conforming property when it comes to changes.
That was I Ching's
So,
point.
but that exists whether these couple of tweaks I made are in place or not in place. So there's already that discrepancy existing. I think the case law and the statute recognize that development, especially in Eastern Mass, this is just a guess, but I've been through a bunch of cases, that most houses, or there's a substantial amount of pre-existing non-conforming structures. So it's somewhat field leveling, and we want to encourage some amount of modernization. That's just a guess. Still, the few conforming houses, older houses in Winchester don't get these breaks. They don't get them now. They wouldn't get them after the changes. They wouldn't get them if you didn't have 355 at all and you just relied on the cases.
Your edit is saying that if it's an existing non-conforming structure and the proposed changes do not increase or add a new nonconformity, then
well, if it's an existing non-conforming structure, then you're either going to be in 1, 2, and 3, which is by right, or you're going to be in the final paragraph, which is a special permit.
Up till now, it's been a very clear thing. It's literally a fork in the road. If you have a conforming structure and conforming lot, and you want to create any new nonconformity, you have to get a variance.
Okay.
If you've had anything about your property or lot or house or setbacks or whatever that makes it a non-conforming, then you've been on the other side of the fork in the road, and you're eligible for a special permit for any. And this, I'm just saying what the way.
Or by right, Richard, because under 1, 2, and 3. Right.
Yes, and again, I'm sorry to keep interjecting, but I
no,
just
no,
want
no.
to say,
But this is very helpful clarification. So that's to Jay's point, that the people that own fully conforming properties are disadvantaged because they have to go through the variance process, which is more onerous with much tighter strictures.
so Sally, what I would say to you from my experience, and we've literally done maybe 300 projects in town, like maybe 2 houses and 298 additions, renovations, is usually the houses and the properties that are conforming are larger. They're usually big enough lots that we can still find a way to add. It's pretty, we've applied for, and I'm not exaggerating, probably 100 special permits over 20 plus years.
Right.
We've applied for 3 variances because there were really unique circumstances. I don't want to take up everybody's time like explaining those unique circumstances, but I very rarely run into the frustration that I think you're all struggling with when we've been working on conforming houses and properties. Usually they've been bigger lots,
right?
And we've been able to find a way to basically avoid having to apply for a variance. We've been able to come up with a solution.
Right. I see.
And that's actually a good thing, because it meant that we weren't encroaching on a setback, and therefore we weren't building too close to somebody else's house. So it was kind of a, so I'm not sharing the frustration that I think some of you are struggling with. That doesn't make me right, but I would just want to say, like, I'm not experiencing that frustration in our work.
So I'm going to say something real quick, Dia, and then then I'll be done. Is that out of the 7, there's although we have about 8,000 or so housing units, we have about 7,000 or so more lots. And when they went through the rezone in 2012, they stopped counting, they were counting the number of non-conforming properties out of the around 7,000 or so. And they stopped counting around 2,500 or something like that. So the point here is that there's a very, very large amount of non-conforming properties here in town. What you're talking about in front of the ZBA of the same situation where we have this, like, you have a right setback encroachment and now you want to do a new nonconformity on the left. Practices, that's a special permit. We've had 1 or 2 of those per year for the past 10 years, something like that. The point is that we're going to see more of those as you go on. I would say that now is a time to have a vote. You're not voting on language. The reason why it was on the ballot or on the agenda tonight was that the current language can be interpreted in 2 different ways. We're here to decide which way it is, and then you decide the language to do that. So I mean, I think it does make sense. You know, do you want to give this benefit to the people that have non-conforming properties or not? If there's more information that's necessary, I think maybe a further meeting or not. I don't know, but you should have everything you need.
Yeah, I think
I see. Okay.
what I see
Thank
right
you, Brian.
now,
It's helpful.
we have our charge is to determine whether we continue with the current practice or whether there's a sea change and we change it. And if we want to look at other things like completely conforming buildings and they add a nonconformity, that's a whole new ball of wax. So what we have now is we have previous practice, which all of a sudden is now in doubt. And we can either say we're going to resolve that doubt so that previous practice continues,
right?
Or we can say, no, we're going to switch it the other way. We're going to change previous practice. So if this board wants to take up shortcomings in the zoning to cure some other ill that isn't in front of us, that's a whole different discussion, which, as I Ching has pointed out, will take some time because, as we know, our zoning is complex. And as John Muir put it, something about pulling one string and everything falls apart or something like that. But I would say that we're just looking for a policy direction to cure or not cure this one particular issue. If we try to go to a much larger issue, then we're just not going to get anywhere.
And simply put, the one particular issue is that if you have a non-conforming structure and you wish to propose a new non-conformity, this law specifies that it will be by special permit.
Is that, Jay, do you agree with that statement? That seems very clear.
Yeah, for single and two family houses. Yeah.
Right now, is that driven by the 2 comments that you've made, or is additional language required to indicate special permit?
I think that this language solidifies that premise.
And the special permit is in the first
any
paragraph.
ambiguity or contrary interpretation.
So I just want to be clear again. Tonight, we're merely voting on the policy position going forward.
Right.
And then, so that's all we need to do right now.
Okay, good.
So it's the policy decision, which is to direct town council, and Jay has already given us language, but the policy decision is to direct town council to craft language which retains the existing practice in regards to non-conforming structures and increased non-conformities. So that's, and so I believe the motion, or so what I'm asking you is to affirm that request. And so I think let's just do the voting again. I Ching?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
Sally?
Aye.
Nick?
Nay.
Okay, and Diab says aye. So we are 4-1. And we don't have time to go into your concerns right now, Nick, because we are,
Yeah, I don't really know what they are at this point. I just feel like I need more information and I need to see how this plays out in terms of language. And
again, yeah,
I think
so
I think we're very far away from the actual meeting that we need the vote for. So that's the reason.
well, the vote we will have next is whether the language meets the policy.
Right.
So again, we're not voting on language tonight. We're merely voting on policy. So
And
if
the
you have,
policy is founded in principles, philosophy, which is, do we want to allow people who have houses in a tight town, many of which houses were built before the zoning bylaws were passed, the permission by special permit to make their house more non-conforming because, not for that reason, but because it suits a need of the residents of the house.
I mean, I think this, yeah, so I think we've had a vote on policy. I think we will continue this discussion. I think, Jay, you've got a clear indication of where we're going. And I think with this language, we can certainly take this language as proposed, show it to the ZBA and to the building department, and ensure that their interpretation is the way that this board would interpret it, i.e. following this policy. And so then we will get some feedback, and then we'll come back and do a final vote on language, which is part of our process for going to town meeting.
With the goal of bringing it to Springtown meeting.
This is Springtown meeting, because
Right.
the sooner we resolve this, the better.
Right, so
Okay.
there's a public vetting process that will take it through between now and then.
Yes.
This would still be a minor change, only I would see it as a minor change simply because all it's trying to do is reflect current practice. So you're not changing, it's just more brought to everyone's attention that it could be construed two different ways, but it's always been construed one way for so long. So I would say that it's as a reflective change, or maybe not minor, maybe it's just it's just reflecting what's on the ground.
Right, and I'm sure we will get, once this goes through public discussion and hearings, there will be discussion on the choice of words and the language and all of that. So as we know, the sausage is yet to be fully made. So, okay, thank you, Jay. I think we are done with that. And then I realize we're 15 minutes over, but we do have a really short discussion we have to have on hiring our new town planner. So to bring you up to speed on the activities of last Tuesday. So the personnel board met to discuss the position description. There were a number of other people at the meeting, including several members of the design review committee and several citizens. There was concern expressed. So overall, the members of the personnel board who had an opinion of our position description thought it was well written and that they thought we should go forward with it. However, there were concerns expressed by the members of the design review committee and one member of the historic commission. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that Michelle McCarthy was there. As to whether or not the language was removing support for their boards in terms of the support that the town planner has historically provided. So I think there was confusion as to what the word staffing meant. When we talk about staffing another board, we mean in particular that there is mandated attendance and there are particular tasks that are associated. So for instance, Brian did things like write grants for the historic commission and other things I've forgotten. But the point is that when we use the word staffing, there are very specific duties associated with that. And I don't think that is apparent in our position description. It just says the word staffing. So for instance, the design review committee felt that they were very concerned that they were not getting called out in the new language I have had extensive conversations with them via email since last Tuesday. I believe that I have resolved their concerns and pointed out that the old language actually left it up to the planning board's discretion as to whether we would actually provide them with any assistance from the town planner. And that the new language is, I think, very explicit that the town planner provides their expertise to any part of town government. So there's no discretion there whatsoever. So I believe that that is, I've met their concerns. And I sent around, I believe today, the final part of our conversation where I asked the DRC if they had any further concerns or they disagreed with that assessment. And they did not respond that they had any concerns or they disagreed with that assessment. The other, so the point of the matter is, sorry, I'm veering off there. The point is that we do not yet have an approved revised position description. And the personnel board voted to take no action on our position description in response to these concerns from these other board members, not from the entire boards, but also because the chair, Peter Kaimetz, was of the opinion that this was really not a disagreement about the position description. It was a disagreement about the level of resources in the planning department. And he asked the HR director, Mike Town, to set up a meeting between himself, the town manager, and a representative from the select board to talk about resources at the planning department. And so the rest of the personnel board said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. We're going to put off making a decision on this position description until after that meeting, which will probably not take place for at least a couple of weeks. And the personnel board probably won't come back in until next year. So all of that being said, we have to make a decision as to whether we wish to post this position using the old position description, or do we want to wait until we get the new revised position description?
And the arguments against one versus the other were if that we wait, it will take even longer to hire a replacement. The counter argument to that one was that, well, it's 2 weeks away from Christmas. If we can settle this right after Christmas, those 2 weeks of waiting don't even really count. And we'll either way probably have somebody by March, April, right? So that was one argument against changing or against posting it now. Another argument against posting it with the old job description was, and it was kind of a little bit of a joking repartee, but it was to the effect that given how much is in that job description, it would discourage valid candidates from wanting to work in this town because they're under-resourced, and it's very evident from the job description. So, and then furthermore, I repeat what Diab said, that one of the members of the personnel board said, this is a very good written, the new job description that was helped put together by I Ching and Diab is a very well-written document, in that it doesn't specify year-to-year deliverables. It specifies the big picture of the job. And another argument against going with the new job description was that it was explained that in past years, the planning board used to use the job description as the template and the checklist for performance evaluations, when I think that Diab, at least under Diab's tenure that I've been on the board, we use the goals and objectives as the template for evaluating position. And it seemed that the chair of the personnel board agreed with the subsequent, or the latter practice, not the former. So all of which is to say that there was a strong argument for changing the job description and sorting through all of these confusions about whether it's specific or not. And maybe there would be some minor, very minor text edits to make it more explicit in specific areas to satisfy the needs of others, but that it's generally a good job description, but we need to get the conversation going between the town manager, the personnel board, and a member of the select board.
Well, that's not our job. That's
No,
actually
we don't,
HR's
they
job.
do.
Yeah.
And that's what's holding it up.
I should also note that the chair of the personnel board was of the opinion that we not proceed with the old job description. He thought that would be detrimental to our search. I personally agree with that, but obviously that's up to this board. If we decide to wait for the new description to be approved by the personnel board, we're talking about posting the job probably in the new year, which was only a couple of weeks away at this point.
Yeah, it would be like the first week.
So that is those are, let's open up the floor to questions and comments and all of that stuff. It's just shy of 10 o'clock, just so you know.
I'm in favor of waiting to try and get the revised job description approved. I don't think you're losing anything in the next couple of weeks. Very little happens between now and the new year, in my experience, at least, especially in the job market. So I think it's more important to get it right. I don't think you're losing that much time in reality.
Okay. I Ching?
I also would advocate for waiting. I do think that posting the former job description would scare off some candidates and reveal some. It seemed unprofessional. Just it didn't seem like a true industry standard job description.
Okay.
And it does show our weaknesses of how undersourced we are.
Nick, your response.
Yeah, it just seems like this job description has to do so many things. In my experience is that it just would be nice if you could post an advertisement. It doesn't have to be this belabored document. But I guess that being said, I would tend to go with the judgment of the other board members on this.
Okay. Sally.
Which we've used.
Oh, me? Did you say
Yes, you.
Sally?
Yes, Sally.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm in favor of waiting for the new job description to come through, but I do want to sort of put it on the table that I understand how such a long bulleted job description was created, and it was created in the process of trying to get town meeting approval for the funding of the job way back in the beginning, when there never was even any town planner. And it was that level of detail that I think evolved as a case-making exercise for funding the job. Now that the job is funded and it's been in place for, I'm sorry, Brian, 9 years?
Yeah, but the job description that we're changing right now was not the job description that was used for when I started. It got changed in between.
I see. All right. Well, nonetheless, I'm in favor of, as Kurt said, waiting until the new job description comes out. And as I Ching said, that the one that we would put out just seems to tip our hand as having a lot of work in the planning.
Well, I mean, so I am also in favor of waiting. I just want to point out that the job posting language that I sent around also talks a lot about all of the duties and points out that this is a single occupant of the planning department.
Absolutely. The job posting narrative tips the hand, even if the job.
But I think it doesn't tip it in an unprofessional manner.
No.
So with that, I think the board does have unanimity that we will wait until we get the revised posting approved. We will be discussing in a couple of weeks more about this process in terms of how we will do the interviews, the selection, how we will incorporate other people's opinions. Certainly, the DRC chair has requested that they provide input, as has the historical commission chair. So of course, we're going to include those. So that we'll have a longer time discussion for that. And at that point, we should also have a discussion, and I will talk again with the historical commission chair as to whether any language needs to be changed in the revised position to ameliorate their concerns about future support. So I will pursue that, and then I think that's all we have time for tonight, because it is really late.
And
I do think that all that drama was everybody's way of working out our grief and losing Brian.
I wish I could say that was the case, but I would say there is more to it than that.
And Diab, I do see it on the agenda for December 20th.
Yes, it's on the, yeah, so people look at your planning board agenda, and as long as I don't keep canceling meetings, we should be okay.
Inadvertently.
And yeah, well, my computer just did it on its own. It apparently just doesn't want to go to meetings anymore.
Just a quick reminder, we are in person
We
next
are-
week. No hybrid. So there's no Zoom. There's no
Yes.
Zoom. I don't
This
think.
it will be Brian's last meeting, and so you'll notice that we've blocked off 9 o'clock till midnight for a goodbye party for Brian.
Oh my God.
It's a big party.
Well, it says 9 o'clock. I don't know when it said adjourned, but anyway, so yes, we are hoping this is our farewell to Brian.
Get the janitorial staff out.
Are we allowed to bring party provisions?
We can, but I don't think we're allowed to bring alcohol.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Muted provisions. Okay.
Yeah.
near beer.
Twinkies and,
You can move the meeting to another place.
We can always adjourn to another place. So
especially
anyway,
if they're open.
so yeah, we can make sure we adjourn early enough that they are open. So I would really welcome a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
and a second, please.
Okay.
Second. Roll call vote, please. Kurt,
Aye.
Yi Ching,
Aye.
Sally,
I
Nick,
Aye.
Diebs is aye as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Richard Leaf.
thank you, Richard. Thank you, Nancy. Bye, Maureen.
Bye, guys.
What are you today, Nancy? You're a recording secretary. Thanks to WinCam. Thanks to Brian Zickler, our town engineer. Thank you to everyone out there in the peanut gallery. And we will see you again in 2 weeks. Have a great evening.
No, 1 week.
What? 2 weeks.
More than 2 weeks. Back on Zoom. Not till the new year.
Oh yeah, that's right. 1 week. We're here in 1 week. The 20th.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.